on the various statutes that are present in this case, okay?
Okay.
I believe you have Exhibit 1 from the people in front of you that has several different MCLs there. Do you have that in your possession right now?
Yes.
Okay. Regarding those particular statutes, you've read them previously, you are familiar with them. Is that a fair and accurate statement?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other statutes that you have read and that you are familiar with apart from the Michigan compiled laws, such as federal statutes relevant to this?
Yes, I have reviewed those.
Okay. And does 3 U.S.C. 5 and 3 U.S.C. 6 ring a bell in terms of being familiar to you?
3 USC, there's several of them.
Right.
So I no, to answer your question, no. I mean, I can't cite specifically what those are.
That's okay. I'm sorry, let me interrupt. But generally, when it comes to the federal statutes, you have reviewed several pertaining to the Electoral College and the electoral vote counting process, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I want to begin first by taking a look at MCL 168.42. Do you happen to have a copy of that in front of you contained within Exhibit 1?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not going to ask you to read every single thing every single time, but can you tell me by taking a look at that statute, and if you need to take a moment to review prior to answering, I understand, but can you please tell me how electors are selected?
I don't want to get this wrong, so I would just prefer to recite.
That's fine, and we can break it down.
Instead of
Sure.
phrasing here. In the year, so it's 168.42, presidential electors selection at a state political party convention certification, section 42. In the year in which presidential electors are to be elected under section 43, each political party in the state shall choose at its fall convention a number of candidates for electors of president and vice president of the United States, equal to the number of senators and representatives in Congress that the state is entitled to elect. Chairperson and secretary of the state central committee of each political party shall, within 1 business day after the conclusion of the state convention, forward by registered or certified mail a certificate containing those names of the candidates for electors to the Secretary of State. Candidates for electors of president and vice president who shall be considered elected are those whose names have been certified to the Secretary of State by the political party receiving the greatest number of votes.
Thank you.
There's more.
Oh,
The greatest number, I'm sorry, you're right, for those offices at the next November election. My apologies.
thank you very much, Agent Sean. So taking a look at this, and more so the second half of that law that you just recited or read into the record, it states there that the Secretary of State of Michigan has a listing of the electors for each party, correct?
The candidates, the number of candidates for election.
Okay. Do you have a listing, or during the course of your investigation, did you obtain a list of those candidates from the Secretary of State?
Yes.
Okay. And when it comes to those particular candidates, how were they selected, these particular electors gathered here today?
They were selected at the party convention.
Okay. Are you aware of any type of selection process or processes prior to the convention regarding how these individuals were picked or elected?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
So are you familiar with the process about how the Republican Party actually picks the 16 electors?
There's a vote. Is that what you're?
Yeah, let's go and talk about that.
Okay.
So how does that vote occur?
So it's based on district, and then
Right.
they're voted on and selected that way.
Right. So when it comes to these electors, every single one of them, they had to have been elected or selected by their congressional district, correct?
Yes,
With the exception of two, I believe, and those two would be individuals appointed at large, right?
yes, sir.
Okay. So you believe that when it comes to these electors, for the purposes of this particular statute, that they were elected by the Republicans within their congressional district, just a yes or a no?
Yes.
Thank you. Second, I'd like to take a look at MCL 168.46. And sir, if you don't mind, and certainly you can read it out loud into the record if you wish. This is a shorter one, but this particular statute, what is your understanding of what is contained within it, or you can just go ahead and read it?
I'll just go ahead and read it. 168.46, as you mentioned, presidential electors, determination by Board of State Canvassers, certificate of election, section 46. As soon as practicable, after the State Board of Canvassers has, by the official canvass, ascertained the result of the election as to the electors for president and vice president of the United States, the governor shall certify under seal of the state to the United States Secretary of State the name and addresses of the electors of this state chosen as electors of president and vice president of the United States. The governor shall also transmit to each elector chosen as an elector for president and vice president of the United States a certificate in triplicate under the seal of the state of his or her election.
Thank you. So I want to kind of pick this apart a little bit. So is it your understanding, having read the statute previously, in addition to reading it today, that the governor shall, must, or will essentially certify under the seal of the state of Michigan the results?
Yes.
Okay. And did that happen in the 2020 election?
Yes.
Okay. And you have a copy of that, and I forget exactly what exhibit number it is, but that's okay. I'm sorry? 5, thank you. But exhibit 5 is actually that official promulgation by the governor, where it's a certification and has a seal of the state of Michigan, correct?
Yes.
Okay. When we take a look at the certificate of vote, and I'm not going to go painstakingly through this, that came forward by the Republican electors gathered here today, in addition to the others that have been charged by the people. Did they have any certificate that they put forward in that certificate of vote where there's an attestation by the governor that she certified those particular individuals?
No.
Okay. And was there a seal of any type on that particular document of the great state of Michigan? The Great Seal, I guess is what
We're referring to exhibit 11.
Referring to the certificate of vote, exhibit 11, I believe, that came from the Republican electors.
No. Okay.
So in your estimation, this particular, or in your opinion, in your investigation, MCL 168.46 was complied with, correct?
Complied with for the Democratic.
Complied with by the state of Michigan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do you agree that when it comes to MCL 168.47, given your prior testimony, your understanding of that statute, that only the electors certified by the governor have the legal ability to cast the state's electoral votes for president and vice president?
Yes, that's what it says.
So you agree with that statement, correct?
Can you repeat?
Sure.
I said yes, but I just.
No, I understand. You want to be precise, and no one wants anything different than that. But again, when it comes to the electors, only the electors certified by the governor have the legal ability to cast the state's electoral votes for president and vice president.
Yes.
Okay. And Your Honor, if I may ask a moment for me connecting to the Zoom over here so I can actually share my screen? Would that be permissible?
Yes, and the easiest way to do it, because that cord doesn't usually, especially, I don't know how it does for an Apple, but if you can log into Zoom, are you able to do that?
Yeah.
And then I can make you co-host.
I appreciate that, Your Honor. And I previously spoke with the people about displaying 3 USC Section 5.
People have no objection to displaying the law.
I am happy to hear. And Your Honor, I apologize. May I have the Zoom number?
Yes, it is 876-493-1931.
Thank you.
Are you muted?
I am.
Okay, so and you can start your audio now, but stay muted so it won't echo. I'll make you co-host. And you should be good to go.
I appreciate it. Okay, what I have in front of everyone right now is 3 USC Section 5. This is the particular statute that was in play during the 2020 election. Sir, again, if you need to maybe come up, if you're going to read, I understand. I can maybe try to zoom in a bit, but I do have questions I want to ask you about this, okay? Probably the best I'm going to be able to do. I'm not, in a optician, but are
Yeah,
you able to go ahead and read that?
I think so. I'll try. Be a little bit slow. If any state shall have provided bylaws enacted prior to the day fixed for the appointment of the electors or its final determination of any controversy or contest concerning the appointment of all or any of the electors of such state by judicial or methods or procedures, and such determination shall have been made at least 6 days before the time fixed for the meeting of the electors, such determination made pursuant to such law so existing on said day, and made at least 6 days prior to said time of meeting of the electors, shall be conclusive and shall govern in the counting of electoral votes as provided in the Constitution and as hereafter regulated so far as the ascertainment of the electors appointed by the state is concerned, or by such state is concerned. Sorry, I'm struggling.
Well, I believe detective, granted, I'm not looking to have my comments stricken, but you have excellent vision. Okay.
Thank you.
So what I want to do really quickly is to just parse this out a little bit, okay? I believe that it looks like one long run-on sentence, but that's how a lot of statutes are. But let's look at this specifically. What is first your general understanding of the statute in your own words? I'm not looking for a dissertation. I'm just looking for your interpretation of what this means?
The,
Maybe
I'd have to kind of look it over and digest it a little bit more and think about it for,
if I may, I don't mean to interrupt unless you want to continue.
no, it's
But-
just, it is confusing and it's tough for me to make and I'm not trying to draw a legal,
I understand. I'm not here to play gotcha or anything like that. I just want to take a look at the law over here with you. So if I take a look at this particular statute, is it fair to say that, and again, I'll give you some time to reflect upon this question, that the governor's decision about who the electors will be shall be conclusive when it comes to counting the votes in Washington, D.C.?
the governor's decision?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So with that being said, and I don't want to assume facts, not in evidence, but this is a hypothetical to a certain extent. Okay. If the Senate or the President of the Senate, Mike Pence, received the certificate of vote that is from the state of Michigan and the certificate of vote that came from these electors, which one, according to your understanding of the statute, would Vice President Pence rely on?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No, I don't. I mean, I've received information in this investigation that says that they can, he can say that it's not conclusive and go back for like a vote or discussion in Congress. So I don't know.
All right, let me kind of rephrase it this way, okay? I know there's a lot of people that have opinions, pro and con regarding, you know, the Republican electors and Democratic electors and what could or could not have happened. I understand.
Yeah.
But just based upon this statute, first, the governor's decision about who the electors will be shall be conclusive. You agree with that statement?
Yes.
Okay. And those are the only votes that the vice president of the Senate, I'm sorry, the president of the Senate happens to be the vice president,
Yeah.
can count, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, in addition to your investigation, did that occur?
Did he only? Did what
Let me
occur?
do it this way. So the vice president of the United States, did he only consider, to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, the votes that came from the official state of Michigan mailing? And those were the only votes that were counted.
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me.
And as part of your investigation, you spoke to a number of different people in DC. I believe the first witness from the National Archives was one of them, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you referring to, well, are you referring to Agent Stupar or?
The first witness, I
Oh,
believe.
the first witness that was up there? Yes.
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 Okay. And the second witness, the general counsel for the Secretary of the Senate, the second witness, you spoke to him as well as part of your investigation, right?
I don't recall speaking to him directly.
Oh, no?
I
Okay.
had tried to reach out to somebody to get to him.
Okay. So
I would have to refer to my report on exactly which representative I spoke to from the Senate, because it was a process.
sure, and I'm not trying to play gotcha or whatever else, but
I-
to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, your recollection, when you heard the general counsel testify earlier at this prelim, in addition to the first prelim that was conducted, that's the first you really heard from him, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And you were here listening to the testimony of both witness 1 and 2, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And based upon that testimony, and that testimony alone, do you recall whether or not the vice president or the president of the Senate affirmatively had any votes in his hand from the Republican electors, their certificate of vote?
Do I recall?
Do you recall they said that?
Yes. I
So
do.
Mike Pence had the certificate of vote from the Republican electors?
No,
Okay,
I recall the conversation
I don't recall him saying that he had the Republican
Okay.
elector vote. So
That answers my question. Thank you very much, Agent. Then the other question I have is, did you speak with the Vice President's office or any of his staff during your investigation?
No.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, did the Vice President of the United States have a copy of the Republican certificate here, the certificate of vote that is at play?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Did you attempt to contact the Vice President's office or his staff?
No, I didn't attempt to contact his office.
Okay. So you don't know whether or not Mr. Pence had a copy of the certificate from these Republican electors, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
Switch my screen. And I'm not sure exactly how we are labeling the defense exhibits, if it's per defendant or if it's just all
It's
together.
all together.
So what would the next exhibit number be? I apologize. Or letter.
Yeah, I would go with I. That's the
Okay. If that's what it is, then it will be.
I think it's I. It is I.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
You may have the whole alphabet done, not by the end of my examination, but we'll see. Share a different screen with you. And I'm going to ask the court, and just as a heads up, I'm bringing up the Congressional House Record from January 6, 2021, which is essentially the tabulation of votes.
Yes,
Okay.
I understand.
Okay. Yes. I'm sorry. I do not, but I will be able to blow it up, I think, quite well. So he'll be able to see it. Unlike the other one. So what I'm representing here as an officer of the court, that this is a true and accurate copy of the Congressional Record from January 6, 2021. As you can see, you have the date right there. And this is essentially what was said verbatim. So that's my representation or my offer proof of what this really is.
Okay.
Okay. I will blow all of this up. Okay. So I know it's like 3 columns and it's terrible. And by the way, just for information of the court, when this congressional record is read, it's not read how normally folks would read. It's actually sort of like in reverse order. Okay.
Okay.
You're going to notice this in a second.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
I am so happy. If you don't mind, could you please read the highlighted portion from Ms. Klobuchar?
Okay, I was going to ask you how to pronounce that. Senator Klobuchar, Mr. President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Michigan seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden Jr. of the state of Delaware received 16 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris in the state of California received 16 votes for vice president.
This is the reverse thing I was talking about. Can you please read what the vice president said, and it's stated here in the congressional record?
The blue highlight?
Yes.
Okay. The vice president, hearing none, this certificate from Michigan, the parliamentarian has advised me is only, kind of glare, is the only certificate of the vote from that state that purports to be a return from the state, and
that has annexed to it a certificate from an authority of the state purporting to appoint and ascertain electors. There's a glare on the screen.
No, you still have much better vision than I do, even with LASIK, okay? So let's start here. After you have read that, and you need a moment to consider, and again, have you seen this first as part of your investigation?
I believe I've taken a look at it.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's probably been a while.
Yeah.
So if you need to pause and to think for a moment, I got no problem with that.
Okay.
But what are the documents? And I think there are two documents that the vice president is referencing that he has in his hand. Do you know what those documents would be?
The certificate of electoral vote.
Is there another certificate as well? I think it's the last three lines.
Certificate from an authority, yes, the ascertainment.
Yes, so the
Yes.
ascertainment, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And based upon the congressional record in your investigation, do you believe that Vice President Pence had a copy of the certificate of the Republican electors, based upon his own words that you just read?
I believe that he had, I can't speak to anything beyond what it says, so.
No, that's all I'm asking you to do.
So I believe that he had the certificate of votes from Michigan and the ascertainment. As
From
far
the
as-
state of Michigan, right?
Yeah, that's what I, yeah.
Okay, so I'll make sure.
Anything beyond that would be speculation.
Okay.
I don't know.
So if the vice president had the official vote, certificate of vote, and also the certificate of ascertainment, again, official from the state of Michigan, can you please explain to me what is the uttering and publishing that occurred if it never got to the hands of the vice president? The uttering and publishing charge contained within the criminal complaint.
As I explained to Mr. Coleman, I believe it comes from the publication at the Senate, publication at the National Archives. As I said earlier.
So when we take a look at Vice President's words, and I'm not going to continue to harp on this time and time again, but there's nothing contained within the words here of the Vice President that he had knowledge or information or belief that there was another certificate that came from an official authority. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, based on that information.
That's
Yes.
all I'm trying to get at, okay? One moment, Your Honor, I
No
apologize.
problem.
I believe that my colleague that immediately preceded me in doing a cross-examination asked you about the analogy regarding a police report that contained maybe a false statement or false information within it. Do you recall that conversation or exchange with my colleague?
Yes.
Okay. So a police report, and again, just for the information of the court and others, and the refresher recollection, because we're taking a look at a specific case that was cited earlier. That's People v. Thomas, 182 Michiap 225. It's a 1989 case. Okay. Did you have an opportunity to read or look at that case after you were questioned about that yesterday?
No, sir.
Okay. But you recall that when it comes to the statements or the questions that were coming forward by my colleague, he asked you about the police report containing false information and whether or not you believed such a document, a police report with false information would be a forgery. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
Okay. And you recall what your answer was?
No, because I objected, just like I'm getting ready to do now. Objection, relevance.
It's irrelevant.
The relevance goes exactly to the certificates that we are not only talking about during this entire case, but also, frankly, I think it was exhibits 5 and 11, taking a look at the official and unofficial certificate. Plus, there has been testimony elicited that when it comes to the certificate, time and time again, put forward by the Republican electors, it has information that is false. So I want to take a look and see exactly how he understands a document that contains false information, how that would translate over to, again, this Republican certificate that allegedly has false information with it.
The case that was cited in references talks about a police report with a false statement in it that is factually distinguishable from why we are here today, and whether or not this witness believes that a false statement in a police report makes that document a forgery is not relevant.
My response to the response, or I guess reply, would be this, that it is absolutely relevant because I'm trying to take a look at the analytical framework that a special agent Schock would utilize when taking a look at these documents. And in terms of a distinguishment or a distinction, it's very similar. You're talking about an official document and false information. So there's nothing factually distinctive here that would make this irrelevant.
You're talking about, you said an official document and a,
Like, I'll correct what I just said. I apologize. A government document.
with that it contains a false statement versus what, at least how he terms it, a fake document that has false information. That's supposed to be a public. Are those even comparable?
Well, we have essentially here a document that is purported according to the criminal complaint that is of an official nature, that was publicized, or it's more so in the public record, that contains false information. I'm not saying it's completely 100% accurate, but it's like a B+. It's like an 89% match that I think warrants an examination.
And your belief that his answer regarding whether or not he believes that to be a forgery is relevant to him believing the document in this case is a forgery?
Correct, because you have documents that purport to be official or government records that contain allegedly false information within it.
Okay.
I'm not going to go ask him a lot of legal
I
questions.
think he did answer this question yesterday. I know there was an objection. And I think I said that I didn't think that the analogy helped me, really, that it might help him. I feel the same way now. This analogy doesn't help me. But I also understand how they may be trying to understand or delve a little deeper, because I think every time they've tried to ask a question in a different way, they got the same answer, and they are looking for a different answer. Something I think is deeper than they signed the document and it was not a legitimate document. And so I think that's the angle that you're trying to.
And I'm only asking for a little bit of leeway. I'm not going to be asking him to make legal conclusions. I'm just trying to analyze his framework for thinking about the situation. That's all I'm trying to do.
Okay, I will allow the question for your purposes.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. So was it your statement yesterday that or strike that, let me ask it this way. A police report that contains false information, do you believe that document is a forgery or not forgery?
The false document. If it's,
My question, I'm sorry, let me interrupt, but my question is, do you believe that document, a police report that contains false information within it, is either one or the other? Do you believe it to be a forgery or not to be a forgery?
I think it's both. I think it's the same way. I mean, I suppose it's maybe a play on words, but false information on a document is a forged or false fake document. Does that answer your question?
It does not. So let's start here. Let's sort of pick this apart a little bit. A police report, and you were with Beverly Hills Police Department for almost 3 decades, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm not trying to say you're old or anything like that. And thank you for your service down there, because I live in a city just adjacent to Beverly Hills over there in Metro Detroit. But when we take a look at your experience, how are police reports essentially written? I'm not going to get way into this, but I just want a brief answer. How are police reports written, assembled, and how are they filed?
Objection, relevance.
How are police reports filed and
How are they sort of assembled, written, and then filed? Because what I want to do is to take a look at his assertion that such a document could be both a forgery and not a forgery. I need to sort of pick this apart a little bit more with him.
well, maybe ask him how, because I think we're getting away from the limited leeway I was giving you if we start asking him how we create and store police reports. We don't want to get that far outside the realm.
I appreciate that, Your Honor. So can you please help me to understand, in addition to everyone else here, regarding, again, a police report with false information contained therein is both is a forgery and also not a forgery.
No, I didn't say it's not a forgery.
Okay. You said,
I said it's a false document, therefore a forgery. It's not authentic. It's if you have, if you're lying about something or putting in false information, and I'm seeing it as the same.
Which is that it's a forgery or no?
Yes, that's what I
do
said.
you believe it's a forgery?
Yeah, that would be a forgery. Anyways,
You believe that document would be considered under the law, given your experience as an investigator and a law enforcement official, as a forgery?
well, it should qualify with it, depending upon what else is on the document as well. I mean, if we have and I'm having a difficult time answering this because if you're lying on a police report, police reports are supposed to be truthful and factual. If you're lying on it, then you're forging the facts and truth of the matter into a false statement.
So is it your belief or understanding, and I'm about to be done with this line of question, Your Honor, and I appreciate the leeway. Is it your belief and understanding that if a police report has one intentionally false statement written within it, but again, the police report is written by an officer, it's filed away, that document itself is then considered to be a forgery?
Yeah, he or she forged it in whatever manner they're writing.
Just I'm trying to get into how you analyze it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have a different opinion, but my opinion does not matter.
Move to strike.
Withdrawn. So taking a look at the Republican certificate, we've covered this time and time again. You agree that it did not contain any of the official hallmarks that the official certificate had, such as the governor's signature, seal, all that stuff, correct?
No, it did not contain that.
Okay. And I believe you testified earlier that when you first saw that Republican certificate, you were not fooled, right? You did not believe, I think, other words, that it was authentic.
I did not. No, it's an authentic. Well, how do I describe this? I did not believe that it was the official document that was certified at the state.
Thank you. And please tell me why.
well, it didn't, obviously didn't have this, the seal on it and stuff like that, but I'm looking at the document, it still had information that was similar to the document at the state. So it's, I guess one's blue and one's white, black and white is what I'm trying to say. So they look differently.
Do you believe that that particular, through your investigation and your knowledge derived from your investigation, that that certificate of vote from the Republican electors could be counted by the vice president?
Based on that statute?
Yes. I'm just really looking for a
Yeah.
yes or no.
And I'm trying to think here because based on the information in my report has led me to believe that possibly it could be counted by.
Okay, let's
The-
explore that. Why do you think it could have been counted? Based upon your investigation, your
Just
knowledge.
through legal arguments that have been made in various reports that I've reviewed.
And again, I know you're not an attorney,
Yes.
but I know that you've been on this investigation for a while. So I'm not asking for a particular pinpoint citation from LexisNexis or something like that.
Thank you.
But what I am asking is, can you please summarize those legal arguments that you encountered in your investigation, how the Republican certificate of vote could have been counted?
Just through my interview with Ken Chesborough and other citations that he referenced, that it could have been counted. Or it could have, that Vice President Pence could have taken the certificates and said, well, I don't know which one to count here, so there's gonna be some sort of motion to discuss whether or not there's been which votes to count.
And I could put it back up on the screen if you like, but
I'm not,
don't you recall, I'm sorry.
I'm not disagreeing with the statute, sir.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. But taking a look at 3 USC Section 5,
Yeah.
didn't you just read that the governor's certification shall be conclusive and that's what shall be counted?
Yes, I just read that.
Okay. So again, my question is, based upon your investigation, you have looked at all of these things. Okay. How could the Vice President of the United States, pursuant to that statute, count anything else?
I'm not prepared to make a legal argument on that. I can't answer that part. What I didn't disagree with what the statute says.
Okay. Didn't disagree with what the statute says. So in your estimation or in your opinion, having worked on this alleged forgery fraud case, however one wants to go ahead and characterize it, if the vice president would have counted the Republican elector certificate, more so the certificate of votes that came from these Republican electors, if he had that, and if he counted it, would he be in compliance, again, your opinion, with 3 USC Section 5?
No.
No. So these theories essentially kind of dabble, is it a fair characterization that there is a fear that the Vice President of the United States was not going to follow the law?
There was, from what I've learned in my investigation, there was discussion about how presenting both votes would cause a disruption in the count and therefore cause a pause potentially in other states or of the counting of votes from other states.
And, well, not going to go through all the elements of forgery because I certainly don't want to sort of have me be the last word on a Friday afternoon. And then my colleague will question you on Monday or something like that. No, I think we're going to be here until we're done. So that's right. I forgot that. But
Your Honor, since that did come up just now,
While we were engaged in this examination, I have conferred with other counsel in the matter and have advised them that given the court's expressed intention to make sure that Captain Green gets on and off the stand today. In order to ensure that that happens, I am prepared to defer my cross-examination of Agent Shock until Monday. Because it's sort of the pace that we're going in, I don't want brother counsel to be rushed. I don't think there's a chance that we're going to get done today with Agent Shock. And I certainly don't want to be responsible for 18 other people being here until 7:30 tonight. So I just wanted to share that with the court.
I'm objecting, Your Honor. He's making me responsible.
And
You're not responsible. You're jointly responsible. No,
And jointly and severally liable.
all kidding aside, though, Your Honor, I don't think that's in Marianne Sheridan's best interest to start the cross-examination of this witness late on a Friday afternoon after we've been here all week. So
I would agree. And again, this is a witness that we've already stated would be recalled anyways. So even if you got your bite of the apple today, he's going to be recalled. So it's not, I think, placing an undue burden on whatever questions you have
Well, I'm
today.
fine.
I don't know if you had a question, but I had a follow-up question on your
Please,
last
yeah.
question. Because you made a statement, Agent Shock, about your conversation with Chesborough, and he indicating that presenting both slates could cause a disruption or pause in the accounting. How was that evidence of any fraud?
Well,
If there was a
it's-
disruption, let's say it did cause a disruption, how was that evidence of intent to defraud though, versus an intent for, hey, take a look into this
Well,
deeper?
the forgery in the publishing of it, publishing it to him, forging, having the forged document presented to him to cause some confusion on his part.
Okay, confusion is a little different than disruption or pause, okay. Because when you say disruption or pause, I'm thinking, well, we need to look into this versus
Yes.
we're confused.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So again, I'm not getting into the elements of forgery, but I want to get your understanding regarding some of the things that forgery requires, okay? So do you agree that given your experience in the crime of forgery or acts deemed as forgery, there needs to be essentially a risk or a real risk of some type of loss or injury?
I would have to review that specific section to agree with you, but if that's what you have up.
No, I don't have that up, but I won't go through giving pinpoint sites and everything right now.
Okay.
But you believe that just commonly, your understanding of the crime of forgery, okay, that there needs to be a real risk that someone could lose out on something, correct?
Yes.
Okay. For example, like when it comes to a check, if someone forged a check and then turned it in, the victim in that particular case would lose probably money out of their bank account, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that would be the injury or the loss.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So by way of analogy, and if I may have a little bit of leeway here, not too much, but I believe one of my colleagues, your first cross-examiner, was able to talk to you, I believe, about monopoly money. Do you recall that conversation? Oh, I'm sorry. That was you.
I do.
Okay, second counsel, not first.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 1, 2, 3. I think I'm fourth chair, fifth chair. So
No, you're fifth chair, he's sixth chair.
3.
I
Oh,
always
I'm
thought-
sorry.
I always thought it started this way. I'm first.
Technically you are, but he snatched that position in the cross-examination.
Early bird.
Only a bunch of lawyers care what batting. was.
Yeah. But my apologies, Mr. Gilbert, the second chair questioned you about monopoly money. Do you recall that conversation?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to get into the game of Monopoly. I was never good at it. But what I do want to ask you is going back to that check analogy I gave you, or example just a few moments ago. If I took a bar napkin and I wrote to so-and-so, and I sort of just put on there some of the elements that you would need to cash a check, and I intend to maybe defraud or deceive, and I go to a bank and I'm like, hey, can you go ahead and cash this? Do you think that the bank teller would take that seriously? Or do you think that the bank teller would be like, this guy, perhaps there's something wrong with him?
Is this a hypothetical
Yeah.
that we're asking about?
Yes.
Yes, but it doesn't match up to what the case is about.
Well, I'm gonna get there, don't worry.
Okay,
Okay, I'm just covering this one element at a time.
okay.
So going back to that, do you believe that that had an opportunity to be accepted? Or do you think it would likely be accepted by the teller or not?
A bar napkin with just something written on it as a
A
check?
bar napkin that says to Sally Smith from, okay, let me use myself, Kevin Kiefsky, for, $1 million. And I put some fake numbers on the bottom, that's a routing number, and I give it to the teller. Do you think that the teller is likely to accept that check?
Does it have a check number?
Yes, I put 0001 in the corner.
Does it have a routing number? That
Yes,
means
and-
all these things
Yes.
add up.
No, I
add
understand.
up To what,
Right.
I mean, if I walk in with a blank piece of paper and write, $100 payable to Sally, that's a lot different than what we're talking about here, where there was an effort made to
No, I'm
have.
sorry, I'm gonna object. This is a complete narrative. It has nothing to do with the question that was asked. He asked a yes or no question, and this is another example of not even answering yes or no. Please answer the question. You can shut up. But ask it.
There's an objection as to be complete narrative. You did ask a yes or no question, so you need to answer yes or no, if the question is yes or no.
No, but there's more information that I could.
And I'll
provide.
explore that with you.
I recognize that there may be more, but if the
I under-
question is formed on a cross-exam as a yes or no, you only get to give yes or no.
I understand that. Your
If they
Honor.
ask for more, then you can give more, and if there's more that they don't ask for, that the prosecution believes they want the court to hear, then they need to note that down, so that when they redirect, they give you an opportunity to do that, but you can't just decide that you're gonna give an opportunity to yourself to give additional information.
I understand, Your Honor.
Thank you. So if it's a yes or no, you gotta answer yes or no.
I believe your answer to that was no,
No,
correct?
yeah.
Okay. And I like to be.
No, the answer, no.
Who's on first?
Who's on first?
Right. It's been a long week, Your Honor.
It has been,
That's
and
okay.
this was a short week.
That's true. But I'm going to be fair and give you an explanation or an opportunity to provide an explanation as to why you would say no. So please go ahead and tell me why you think that answer is no.
Because it doesn't resemble, it doesn't, I mean, it's not even close, so it doesn't meet the criteria. In looking at this, this particular document, an effort was made to make sure.
I'm sorry, go
You're
ahead.
trying to.
No, I understand. No, go ahead, please.
Explanation.
Yeah,
You're
so
giving
you
me-
gave them
No,
an opportunity
I
to give
stopped
information, now you got a lot of.
I understand. I stopped myself.
In this particular case, an effort was made to create a document that met the requirements that would be similar to those requirements that were for the legitimate document. But in the case or the example that you gave,
I'm sorry, Your Honor, this is the same exact thing happening again. He asked, why wouldn't you take the napkin? Is that the question? Not to compare the two. Okay, this is a non-responsive answer yet again.
Yes.
Well, yeah, no, he told him explain now, so
Explain why you wouldn't take the napkin.
That's what he's
Not-
doing.
Not compare this case. He didn't ask about this case.
I'll have more follow-up questions based
Okay,
on what you have, but go ahead.
I'm
you can
done.
continue,
Go ahead.
you can continue.
Oh, so it's. That's a train of thought, but as, the document that was prepared in a manner that met the requirements of the official document that, also had similar language and whatnot, and, so that's.
So you're saying that when it comes to the Republican certificate, it had some of the important information on there, but not all of it, correct?
I would have to look at each one, but yes, it had some of the information.
We already covered some of the things was missing, correct? Such as the seal and all of that
Yes,
stuff, right?
yes, that's one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how is that different from an example that I gave just a moment ago when it comes to a check? Again, you know, let's say I actually have, I don't know, a piece of paper, flimsy piece of paper, you know, and I take this, not saying Mr. John Freeman's notepad is flimsy, but more so just a piece of paper. And I write all the different things on there again. I have the correct routing number, you know, for, you know, whatever is going on. I have a check number. I have all that different stuff there, but it's not resembling 100% what a check should be. Okay. So would you think that that is something that is likely to be accepted by a bank teller or no?
It could be, depending upon what's on there and what it looks like.
But in all likelihood, the majority of the time, do you think it would be accepted? Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay. Because in this particular example, it's not really substantially similar or facsimile or anything that really resembled a check, right?
The paper that you just
Yeah.
described?
Mhm.
Are you talking about the most recent one?
Yeah.
You said that you added additional things to it to be similar to a check.
Right. But you stated that it would not be accepted, I believe, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Even though that it doesn't have all the required information to actually be cashed, right?
Yes.
Okay. So how is that different from this Republican certificate where it has some of the official language, but again, misses the seal, misses the governor's signature and the like? I'm looking for you to perhaps make a distinction because I already have from you, on one hand, given my examples, you know, something that maybe kind of resembles a check, but it's not, and it's not going to be accepted. How is that different from the Republican certificate?
The major, we just talked about it. I mean, we have the 16 signatures on there on Exhibit 11, along with the language that's similar. And the other document is, I think it's blue in color, and has some other information on there as well. But the intention was to serve it upon the state capitol or the governor's office, and then to mail it off to the National Archives in the Senate. And then there was an effort to even, once there was some concern about it getting to the right place at the right time and trying to pass it on to Vice President Pence. So does that answer? I know it's probably a lengthy answer, but that's the difference that I see in these two situations.
So you're adding context to this, I believe, given the investigation regarding the Republican certificate. But what I'm asking is, again, just taking a look at the certificate itself and the example of the check itself that you admitted, or I believe you testified would not be accepted. So taking a look at those two things, and I'm not getting into the context of something could have been sent or there were people talking about it, but I'm taking a look at these two documents. What's the distinction there? Why is one not likely to be accepted, but the other one would be?
Just the total circumstances when it, even going back to the popular vote, and the vote being certified by the Board of Canvassers, that whole process, you know, carrying forward is why, you know, there was no reason to create this document or pass off this document, Exhibit 11 I'm referring to. Does that answer your question?
I think I get more of your line of thought and what you're thinking, and I appreciate that. Okay. But for for the vote, certificate of vote, any certificate of vote to be counted in DC needs to have an accompanying document, correct?
Yes,
What is that?
the certificate of ascertainment.
Was there a certificate of ascertainment when it comes to the certificate of vote that the Republicans allegedly put forward, or more so wrote?
No.
Okay. And given your understanding of the various statutes, the laws, both state and federal, that we had a brief, it's not Schoolhouse Rock, but we're taking a look at, various statutes in the Congressional Record. Is there, in your understanding of how that is, just based upon all that, the Republican certificate could possibly be accepted by the Vice President if the Vice President followed the law?
Could the vice president, I'm just trying to understand your
I
question.
understand. Go ahead.
Could the vice president decide to accept it
If the Vice President followed the
or
statutes,
follow the statutes?
right?
No, he would be, he'd be looking for the certificate of ascertainment. Could he decide to accept it? That's up to him. I mean, if he wants to accept it, I mean,
Your Honor, I'm sorry, again, he's not answering the question. You're gonna do this. The question was, if he was complying with the law, and he's giving other examples. I don't appreciate this.
The objection is non-responsive.
Thank you.
So again, if I may,
So
I'm
you're gonna
sorry.
repeat the question?
Yes.
Okay.
no, if he's following the law, or if he's following the statute, then that statute says what he should be doing. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
And if he was following the law, and it appears, I believe, through your own words, he followed the law when we took a look at the Congressional Record, is there any risk of loss of the voters here, the 2.6 million or so that voted for Biden in the 2020 presidential election?
If he follows the law.
Right.
Would there be, can you repeat that?
That's fine. So
Yeah.
if the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence,
Yeah.
followed the law as articulated in the various statutes and US code and whatnot that we looked at together. Could, or do you think that the Vice President, well, let me kind of rephrase it this way. Sorry, I'm hearing the child
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
outside.
sorry, it's a fake wall.
That's all right. And I have to say,
These aren't real courtrooms, if you haven't noticed. And so,
I have to say for information of the court, I have my first child, 11 months, so I am very much in tune. When I hear that, I'm just like,
he went to
my
that.
apologies.
She's gonna try to move him down.
I don't mean to displace a child or anything like that.
No, it's the wall.
Second chair, for the record, building is still broken.
Facts. It's still broken. And one of the juror seats is still broken too. So I actually am about to send an email so they can fix that before we have a jury trial.
Thank you for your indulgence. I appreciate it, Your Honor. But my question, Agent Shock, if the Vice President of the United States followed the law as articulated here, could he possibly legally count the Republican certificate of vote that is subject to this investigation or this charge?
No.
No. So was there any risk of loss to the voters of the state of Michigan of having their votes disenfranchised if the Vice President followed the law?
If he follows the law, no. But
And-
there's more to this.
No, I
Yeah.
understand. I understand.
Okay.
I get it.
Okay.
And then the other question I have is, we read the Congressional Record. Did the Vice President of the United States follow the law?
Yes.
So I'm going to be fair. I want to give you an opportunity to explain. So I need you to help me and everyone to understand. And again, I'm just trying to paraphrase. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but just the immediate testimony beforehand, because I know we can't get an instantaneous transcript here, okay?
Understood.
But I believe you testified, this is a preparatory to the question here. I believe you testified that the laws both state and federal, were followed by the appropriate entities, that you testified that when it comes to Vice President Pence, he could not count Republican elector certificate, or more so the certificate of vote, if he followed the law. And the vice president did indeed follow the law. So my question with all of that is, why are these ladies and gentlemen here being charged with forgery and other crimes when there's no risk of loss because the vice president followed the law?
Yeah, and I'm gonna object because a risk of loss is not an element in forgery.
I can actually give you the case point citation if you want. It is
As to risk of loss,
risk of loss being in forgery.
can you give me the citation?
I absolutely can. The case is in re Lloyd, Lloyd. It's a Michigan Supreme Court case, 424, Mich. 514, the 1986 case.
The objections overruled.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm done with Schoolhouse Rock. I'm done with essentially going through statutes and whatnot, but what I want to talk about is some of your prior testimony.
Excuse me,
That I
I'm sure
heard.
you answered the question.
Oh.
He asked the question, why are you charging these defendants?
That's
with
right.
forgery?
Yes.
There's no risk of loss. There was an objection.
Thank
and he
you,
never
my
answered the
esteemed
question.
colleague. Yes.
So it was overruled. I think he could answer the question.
Yes,
can
please.
answer.
For the record, that's good, Chair.
That is good.
To the losses of people of the state of Michigan. So you had a legitimate slate of votes going, and you had another slate of votes that was trying to compete with that legitimate slate. So the loss would be, again, the people of the state of Michigan. And for those those plaintiffs that sued out in Kent County.
So this case was brought because not only of potential loss, I guess, to the people of the state of Michigan, but also specifically the three plaintiffs that brought forward that civil case, that CZ case in Kent County.
Yes, the potential loss is a big deal, just our democracy. I mean, it's supposed to be handled in a certain way and through the statutes that you just described.
So I have another question for you, and I understand that there was a change in your viewpoint or opinion. I recognize that from the onset with my next question, okay?
Okay.
I want you to understand that I know that.
Okay.
But we were talking, I believe, through Mr. Coleman yesterday, there was a conversation about who the victims were. And I believe that the judge asked you about the victims.
Yes.
Okay. And I believe your testimony was essentially at the end of all that, the people of the state of Michigan are the victims, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You remember prior to that, your testimony where you stated that the 2.6 million Biden voters were the victims.
Yes, and
And if I may, I'll give you an opportunity to explain, okay? I try to be a fair guy.
you've been very fair, Counselor.
I appreciate that very much. So my question is, that viewpoint that you later changed, but the 2.6 million Biden voters being the victim, did you hold that viewpoint since the inception of this particular investigation? Or when did you formulate that viewpoint?
No, at the beginning, and it's not, to go back to I think my original statement, like you said, the 2.6 million, 2.8 million. I said, no, it's everyone. I mean, it's everyone. The democracy is important to everyone in the state of Michigan.
I know I understand what your answer ultimately became
Yes.
at the end of that conversation or that dialogue. But you did state, and I believe you just referenced
Yeah.
that I'm correct, that you had and again, I want to make sure I'm getting the numbers right. I'm generally in the ballpark, but the 2.6 million Biden voters were the victim. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We'll take judicial notice of official records. Okay. So the 2.8 million Biden voters were the victim. And then you later said, nope, I'm mistaken. It's the people of the state of Michigan. So that viewpoint that you had of the 2.8 million Biden voters being the victim and those people only being the victim, how did you formulate that viewpoint prior to changing it later?
It was changed relatively quick, soon after I made that statement. I made a mistake.
No, I understand.
And
I'm
so
sorry.
going back to the beginning of the investigation, it's everybody. Everybody,
No, I understand, but
everybody in the state of Michigan, at least.
what I'm trying to do, Agent Shock, is just take a look at the first statement that you made,
Yes,
okay? And I'm not saying that today you believe that, because things change day to day. But what I am asking you is that viewpoint that you espoused under oath on the stand at first, where the 2.8 million Biden voters were the purported victims of this crime. How long, or more so, I'll rephrase it this way, when did you formulate that viewpoint about who the victims were?
the moment I gave that answer, because it was not, I misspoke.
Okay. So did you have that in mind, the 2.8 million Biden voters being the victim when you conducted your investigation?
No, I had everybody.
Okay. And I'm not going to dwell too much on this, Your Honor, but why did you state 2.8 million? Why were you mistaken, in your own words?
In my own words, because I've been on the stand now for 4 days. I've referenced 2.8 million several times. And so that came out of my mouth. And you brought it to my attention. And I recognized on the stand, it's not just the 2 million, it's everybody in the state of Michigan.
So you're not saying that any longer the 2.8 million voters for Biden are the victims, it's all the people of the state of Michigan.
Yes, the people in the state of Michigan.
Even though the vice president had to follow the law, correct?
Yes, is
Even though the vice president did follow the law,
that a question?
yes.
Yes,
Even though that the official certificate of vote and the certificate of ascertainment were counted by President or Vice President Pence, correct?
yes,
And even though there was no risk of loss to the people of the state of Michigan, given the statutes that you read, correct? It's really yes or no.
there was a risk.
There was a real risk.
There was a real risk at that time.
So let's talk about that a little bit, okay? So the Vice President of the United States, the only way that there would be a risk of loss is if the Vice President didn't follow the law. Is that a fair characterization of your understanding of the situation?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
So please help me to understand that, because we covered the situation if the Vice President of the United States followed all applicable federal statutes and rules and regulations. And we said that if you follow the law, there's no risk, your testimony. So tell me, the Vice President can either follow the law or not follow the law, correct?
Understood.
So the Vice President of the United States, if you still maintain, I believe, that there is a risk of loss, that would be contingent upon the Vice President of the United States not following the law, correct?
Yes,
Okay. So it's really the possible action of the Vice President of the United States not following the law that gives rise to these particular charges.
yes.
Okay.
And there's more information, but you wanted.
Well,
a yes
let me
or no
ask you
question,
this. I believe your prior testimony, and I'll give you an opportunity to explain, try to be a fair guy. But I believe it's your prior testimony that when it comes to the president of the Senate, the vice president of the United States, you did not speak with him, correct?
That's-
Yeah. Nor his staff, correct?
No, not his staff, no.
I believe you just testified a moment ago too, that this whole thing is really contingent. And again, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have a court reporter in front of me. But this whole thing is contingent upon the vice president not following the law, correct?
When you say the whole thing,
The charges being brought here.
no, I'm not saying that. I mean,
Go ahead and explain. Tell me what you are saying.
what I am saying is the fact that the document was created, there's many things that led up to that, and I think we talked about it at length here, from going back to the canvassers certifying the vote, the Democratic elector, or the people of the state of Michigan, it was announced that President Biden had received the popular vote, that the legislature representatives had announced there's nothing that they were going to do to change the vote. There's all this information that went into bringing the charges, or the facts of my case that led to that.
But again, just trying to, I'm not going to use my colleagues' words of pin someone down. I'm just really trying to understand. I just want to get to the truth. The vice president of the United States, the risk or the possibility of him not following the law is what gives rise to these charges being brought, correct?
Well, it's not only him.
Well,
So no, that's not correct.
okay, and tell me why.
So there was an effort to, going back through my investigation and having some time to think about it, that these votes would also impact our state legislature's decision on whether or not that they would act and say, we're not going to accept, because there's so much controversy here, we're not going to accept this. And there was pressure put on those legislatures to make a decision to say that they were going to determine. So before we get to Pence, there's also something going on at the state level as well.
And we'll get to the state level, but just taking a look at the federal level right now.
Yes,
Okay. The individual to count the votes, the electoral votes, is the vice president, correct?
yes,
And for those votes of the state of Michigan that are official to not be counted, the vice president would need to have ignored or not followed the law that we went through, right?
yes,
So you're telling me that you would still bring these charges, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would still ask that these charges be authorized even if there's no risk whatsoever that vice president would not count the votes.
that's what happened.
So you recognize, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you just said a second ago, that one word, vice president, he essentially just counted regular votes that needed to be counted from the state of Michigan, the official votes, correct?
Yes,
All right. And even though there's no way he could have counted the votes of these Republican electors if he followed the law, okay, these charges would still be appropriate.
yes, because there's more to this.
And now I want to get to that second thing, because I
Okay.
believe you want to talk about things happening here in the state of Michigan, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
But-
we're gonna go from DC, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, there's other things going on. And there's other things going on at DC at the time too, on whether there's discussion on whether he's going to count the votes as well. And then there's an effort to serve those votes to him, to get him to ignore the legitimate votes.
Well, let's stay in DC for another minute or two.
Okay.
Can't hurt anything, right? Okay, so I do want to talk about the things here at the state capitol annex. But are you telling me that Vice President Pence, if he followed the law, could still legally count the Republican certificate of vote if it were in his hand? If he legally followed all of the particular provisions?
No,
No,
we just talked about that.
right, okay. So now I want to take a look at the state of Michigan. And I believe I will not be like as detailed as my elaborate or esteemed colleague, I should say. He also elaborates too. That question you about, the uttering and publishing and walking over the state capitol.
Yes.
But again, we're the electors, or more so that certificate of vote. Was that in, I think it's what, the Senate chamber at 2 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
What was it there at that point?
No.
No. That certificate of vote, by the way, that you think that they attempted to deliver, because I believe you said earlier that you have a belief that the certificate of vote was in that envelope, but you don't know for sure. Did you ever recover that envelope?
No, sir.
Did you attempt to recover that envelope?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how you attempted to recover that envelope?
By contacting Ian North.
And when it comes to, is it Northam or Northam?
Owen,
Northam.
North Dunn.
Northam,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So when it comes to Mr. Northam, you contacted him, and what did you ask him?
He refused to speak.
Okay, he refused,
Yeah, he has counsel.
but did you attempt to, through a legal process such as a search warrant, subpoena, or otherwise attempt to get that particular envelope from him?
No,
Why?
I didn't have enough probable cause to know where that document was at. So if I was gonna put together a search warrant and I would have to have knowledge of where it's at, where is it being kept at? Where did he take it from? Where did it go? Things of that nature.
In that video, and again, I'm sorry, I don't have the exhibits memorized, but them walking over to the Capitol, I'll just maybe leave it there. I don't have to play it, but to the best of your recall or recollection, who was holding that envelope?
Ian Northam was holding it at one point.
Okay,
I don't remember all the particulars,
that's fine. I understand.
but he was holding it, yeah.
But reviewing that footage, was Mr. Northam the last individual to possess or to hold the envelope in the footage that you have?
Yes,
Wouldn't that give rise to probable cause in your mind to issue a search warrant to say, hey, you're the last person seen with this envelope. I want to see what's in that envelope.
it would give rise for me to call him up and to find out that information. But again, are you suggesting that that would give me enough probable cause to get a search warrant on anything, on his home, or what? I don't know the lines, what were your,
Well, if the court may permit me a little bit of latitude just for a minute. I mean, if an item were stolen, and given your experience as a law enforcement officer, it changed hands a few times, and then the last person to have had that item, but then you don't know where the item is, that wouldn't give you rise or to issue a search warrant to say that there's probable cause, like, you know what, there's like a 20% chance or more that this guy has it. That doesn't give rise?
it's part of it, yes. But I don't think you have enough to target somebody's home, or I need some, I guess what I'm trying to say is I need some more information.
So if I may, and I'm trying to be charitable here and also judicious with the court's time, can you please explain to me why that issuing a search warrant, subpoena, or any other lawful demand for that particular document, the seminal document in this case, why that's not appropriate, doesn't give rise to probable cause. But when it comes to the donors and going to give send go, that is giving rise to probable cause during your investigation. Can you please help me to understand?
So the envelope, as we know, was mailed off at the East Lansing Post Office. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
so he may have taken it, handed it off, and I'm speculating here, of course. It may have been gone. So in my search warrant and putting that kind of information into my search warrant, the envelope, of course, I have to be truthful, right? So I believe.
And I want you to be always
that
truthful.
that it went from here at the State Capitol Annex to being mailed off. So, you know, that's where likely it went. So that's why I'm saying that I didn't have the probable cause to go after his house or anything like that, because I know that an envelope proportionate in size was mailed off, or two, I should say.
Let me ask you this. And again, if the people would like me to look up the exact exhibit number, I will, and maybe we'll have to refresh your recollection. But first, can you please describe from your memory the color, the shape, the orientation of the envelope that Mr. Norton was carrying with him to the Capitol Annex?
Those shapes would be like a rectangle.
Yeah.
Just brown or tan.
And I believe from the National Archives, you received a copy of the envelope purported to transmit the certificate of votes, correct?
Yes.
And can you please describe that envelope?
You're gonna ask that.
Well, I'm glad I'm predictable.
I'm trying to recall what that one looked like, but I believe that it was more of a packaging envelope that would typically be sent through the mail. So like a FedEx or UPS. Well, he's got it over there. So yeah, so it's typically like, and I don't, maybe.
This is Exhibit 11, if I may approach the witness.
Exhibit 11.
I think
No,
that's
no.
previous.
Oh, I'm sorry. What exhibit is it?
Would you like exhibit 10?
Thank you. Oh.
We need a 5-minute break. So you guys can do that.
Okay.
Thanks. The record. You can be seated.
We should lie.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I haven't read this before, so. No, I want to. Thank you. You can try. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll be able to make it.
I know.
Oh, they've been this year.
It's broken.
I think you're, I mean, I think your plan should be sitting with their plans.
Okay, well, while we're figuring this out, I was gonna try to wait for the other attorney, but I do have a concern that I notified our administration that that chair was broken and needed to be repaired so that she could put it in a work order. She came and she taped off for the safety and security of not just you, but for the court, because if you fall and injure yourself now, we're at risk for liability
I
because
know
we
a
are
lawyer.
we are aware that that chair is now not operable. She did express some concerns about comments that your client made towards her that she found to be offensive, asking her if she was maintenance, and saying at least she's not carrying a mop. She's a deputy court administrator. I didn't ask for your response. She's far from maintenance and she's taping off the chair because it's broken and doing her duties. She doesn't need your opinion as to whether or not your attorney wants to sit there or not.
I apologize, Your Honor. I meant no disrespect to the court nor your,
She was very offended. I told her I will address it
Yes,
because those comments should not have been made. They're not appropriate. She's not maintenance. And even if she was, maintenance works very hard at their jobs, whether they carry mops or not.
yes, ma'am.
So that seat has to be taped off because it's broken and we're aware of it. You can sit in front of him, he can sit over where the other defendants are sitting. Or you can make other arrangements as you deem necessary. You just can't sit in that chair right now.
The building's broken, I acknowledge.
And it continues to break more and more.
And we're not helping with all of us.
It's not, I mean, it's not your fault. We're dealt with this. We're using the accommodations that we have to the best of our ability.
That's right.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Back on the record, you were questioning, but you were having a sidebar about an issue. I don't know if you're ready or if you still need to discuss your issue.
Regarding a few of the different demonstrables or the things I pulled up on the screen, I believe that when it came to Exhibit I, if I'm not mistaken, we identified it, but I don't believe I asked for it to be admitted. So at this time, I would ask that it would be admitted.
No objection.
Defendant's I is admitted. I had a highlight next to it because I knew it was not admitted.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. And then as well, when it comes to the congressional record, I don't know if you want to admit that as an exhibit or if the court would be okay taking judicial notice.
I'm okay taking judicial notice.
All right, thank you very much, Your Honor. In fact, I'm going to move on to a handful of other things regarding the state capitol, or I should say the annex. I know Mr. Renner isn't here right now, but
Yes, I understand.
he'll correct me. His spirit will correct me. So when it came to the Capitol Annex, when Mr. Northen was attempting to enter, what is your understanding from your investigation why he was denied entry into the Capitol building along with the others here?
Just my understanding or what was said.
Only your understanding, because I cannot solicit hearsay.
That's why I'm
No, I appreciate it.
clarifying.
Right.
So, because the Democratic electors had already been seated.
And were they the only people that were, as a group, denied entry into the Capitol, or were all other members of the public also denied entry into the Capitol building from the result of your investigation?
My understanding, everyone else was.
Okay. And again, I believe you testified, I just want to make sure I understand this, because of the Democratic electors being seated, that's why the whole entire Capitol complex, or more so the Capitol building, was closed off from public access, correct?
No, that's,
So please help me understand why was it cut off then?
well, there was some, throughout my investigation, there was mention of a bomb scare, and then there was some debate back and forth about all of this stuff. All I can say is that the Capitol was closed off. And that the Democrat, and the reason that the trooper gave was because, well, I don't want to speak for him. because
No,
that's
of course,
hearsay.
and he'll be here in a little
Yeah.
bit. But I want to talk a little bit about your understanding about this bomb scare thing. Okay, so how did you learn that there was a bomb scare contemporaneous with the time that the Capitol was shut down from public access?
There was mentions through their social media posts about it.
I'm sorry, whose posts?
I don't remember. That's where I heard that information. And I can't remember if there was some video mixed in there as well, or it may have been published in the media as well.
And
That's
I'm
where-
gonna ask, I'm sorry, I thought you finished. I'm still gonna ask that the witness identify, they said there were some possible.
That's where I was.
I'm
No, you're
sorry,
good. Please, go
I'm
ahead.
jumping ahead. It had to be somebody who he's referring to as they, and if you can't remember specifically, it was this person or that person, it was maybe one of the electors. Not telling them how to answer that. I think we can get a better answer as far as they.
Can you identify who they is?
I can't, Your Honor, I can't recall. I apologize.
So you don't think, or you don't know if you're talking about social media posts from one of the electors? Or are you referencing
No.
a social media post maybe from a third party?
That's what I mean. I don't.
You don't know?
I don't know. I don't recall.
You had experience with bomb scares when you have been working at the Beverly Hills Police Department or other law enforcement agencies in the past?
Yes.
Okay. Not gonna get way into this, Your Honor, but I'm asking my witness here, or actually people's witness, a few questions about how something like this would be handled. So for a bomb scare, typically, in your experience, don't you vacate the whole building if indeed there is a bomb scare?
No,
No? Keep people inside?
it's all based upon the circumstances of the scare. So based on the information that's received, and also based on the property owner, what they want to do, what do they feel comfortable with?
Okay. So about the bomb scare, you got that from some social media post. You're not necessarily sure where or from whom, correct?
And media, it could have been, like I said, from, other than the social media, it could have been from the media. Or saw that as well.
Did you investigate this by asking the Michigan State Police or other law enforcement agencies if indeed there was a bomb scare? Or if there was a threat of a bomb or something of the like?
That was done prior to me taking this case. So
Okay.
there was I don't want to get.
No, it's okay. I understand. I just want you to be able to
Yeah.
talk from your own personal knowledge of the investigation and things that you have done and reviewed. Which leads me to my last question about the bomb stuff. That is, if this was done prior to you getting on the case, which I think was December 28th, 2021, right? Or 22. Apologies. Did you see or review any notes in the investigatory file about this alleged or potential bomb scare from a prior investigator?
I did review notes. I believe there's some text messages and there was a report I don't recall if there was mention of a volunteer.
It's okay. And I know the captain will be here in a bit. We'll have an opportunity to ask the captain. Okay. I'm going to transition now and talk a little bit more specifically about my client, Mr. Frost. And I know we're going back a few days regarding some of the things I'm going to be questioning you about. So I believe this is Exhibit 23, if I'm not mistaken. These are social media posts for Mr. Frost. Do you happen to have a copy of Exhibit 23, Candy, by chance?
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you. Your Honor, if I may approach?
Yes.
Thank you.
Wish I could be like my first chair and be like, may I reach, and just sort of. So, sir, you remember seeing this exhibit before, I believe, a day or two ago, and you solicited or gave testimony on it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to draw your attention to a social media post, I believe, that you said was made by, or purportedly made by, my client on December 14th, 2020 via Facebook. Can you find that post and let me know when you do?
Are you referring to the highlighted one, sir?
Yes.
Yes, I found it.
Okay. And can you read that social media post?
Yes. Just the summary or the comments?
His actual post, not the comments from other people, perhaps, if they're
Okay.
on there.
Okay. You are right, Tanya. Exclamation point. I am an elector and they refuse this entry into the Capitol. ... More to come, comma later.
That particular statement, through your investigation, is anything contained within that statement untrue or false?
It's untrue.
How's it untrue?
It's not an elector, he's an elector candidate.
So, again, let's talk about this.
Okay.
When it comes to being an elector, he was, along with the other 15, elected by the Republican Party to be on the slate, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. And then when it comes to your understanding of how these ladies and gentlemen referred to themselves, even prior to December 14th, okay, they referred to themselves as electors, correct? Commonly, they would refer to themselves as electors, correct?
Electors or, yeah,
Okay.
yes.
So understanding that elector is the common nomenclature, I guess, or terminology. Other than that particular statement about the elector, is there anything else untrue about that statement?
No, sir.
Okay. So they were rejected entry into the Capitol, correct?
Yes, sir.
And nothing was delivered to any individual, any entity at the Capitol or the Capitol Annex, correct?
I'm not trying to be difficult.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, I talked about it, my interpretation of delivery, it was rejected. So that nobody received anything at the Capitol.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay,
So no one received anything at the Capitol, correct?
yes.
I'd like to draw your attention to social media post January 7th, 2021, I believe, via Facebook. Could you please find that within Exhibit 23, please?
Yes, sir, on there.
Thank you. And can you please read Mr. Frost's comment?
Yes, the whole thing or just the highlighted portion?
Just the highlighted portion.
Okay. The failures of our own GOP party are disgusting. I am an elector and they failed us in Lansing repeatedly.
Is there anything illegal that Mr. Frost asserted by, or anything, let me phrase it this way. Is there anything illegal content-wise within, or being asserted within that comment? Or let me
This is
just,
just a misrepresentation of elector, but we talked about how
Right.
some people refer to them as
Right.
elector themselves as well.
okay. Would you feel comfortable or adopt this point of view that apart from, I don't want to call it quibbling, but the debate about the term elector, that the rest of that is political speech?
Would you mind repeating that? I'm sorry.
Other than the term elector in that particular comment that you
Oh.
read, would you characterize or would you interpret the rest of Mr. Frost's comment to be political speech?
I don't know what you mean by political speech.
Sure.
Could you just,
Sure.
I just want to make sure I get it right.
So, First Amendment to the Constitution, freedom of speech.
Yeah,
People are able to make statements,
got that. Yeah.
and generally it protects lots of different things, including political speech. So people can comment about political affairs and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, right. So my question is, when it comes to the remainder of that comment, and I'm sort of ostracizing or taking out that term elector right now, would
Yeah.
you characterize the rest of his comment as political speech?
And I think I'm going to object to the statement not being taken as a whole.
I'm only taking a look at the highlighted portion that came from the prosecutor. This is their own exhibit.
Yeah, but elector is in that highlighted portion. What I'm saying is that sentence, those two sentences either need to be taken as a whole.
Okay, oh, I see what you're saying. I'm fine with that.
Okay,
Okay,
I don't have a copy, so I don't see what you're saying, but so if you see it, that's fine.
so including the word elector, that's fine. Do you view that as political speech?
No, I don't view it as political speech
Please tell me why.
because I don't understand what political speech would mean, tying it to this. Could you give me an example of what you would consider political speech?
Let me rephrase a little bit because I have no problem giving an example. I just want to make sure I keep everyone happy generally and not take too long. Okay.
I understand.
So do you believe that when it comes to Mr. Frost's statement, he's expressing a political opinion?
And at this point, I'm going to object. This question's been asked several times. The witness says he doesn't understand political speech. And at this point, I believe the statement speaks for itself and the court is free to infer or not infer whatever she wishes from that statement.
My brief response is that this is not looking to play gotcha. And we're taking a look at the, I guess, totality or everything being complete, the whole statement. I just want to know if he, as an investigator, would characterize that as Mr. Frost expressing a political opinion, either yes or no.
Okay, is that, he previously said that he didn't understand or he didn't know what political speech was, and you're defining it as a political
A
statement,
political opinion,
a
yes.
political opinion. And
And I
you're-
said,
Well,
no. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, we don't know if you need to give an answer to this yet, because we're addressing the objection.
Oh,
Your objection is to him still answering after him. He has
After
told him
the
that it
witness
was-
has said he doesn't understand what the term political speech is, constantly asking him to define this statement by using a term he doesn't understand.
Right.
It's just going in circles.
So that's why I said expressing a political
He's changed
opinion.
it to political opinion, so does that still present an objection for you?
Yes.
And what is the objection now then?
The objection is, it doesn't matter what this witness thinks the statement is as a category. The statement speaks for itself and it only matters what the court wants to categorize.
Did you want to respond?
Sure, I'll be brief. We're taking a look at really how this particular statement influenced and directed his investigation. I want to know, since he got these returns and since they were provided as Exhibit 23 highlighted portions, what these mean. So he previously read these out loud. I'm trying to figure out exactly what they mean in the context of the investigation in his mind. That's all.
Well, that question I don't have a problem with. I have a problem with asking the witness his opinion. Now, if he wants to ask him
Does he believe it's-
what the significance of this statement is in the context of the investigation, that's a different question.
He doesn't have to ask those questions that way, because that's an open-ended question. He can ask it the way he's asking. Do you think this is,
Well, no,
this?
I'm
Do you
only,
think this is that?
I'm only objecting
Yeah.
to the opinion question. But
well,
the
he's
way,
asking, he's rephrased it to
yes,
hopefully explain what he means now, which is, do you think that the contents of this post is a political opinion? I think that provides better clarity for Agent Shock as to what he means, and I think he can answer that question. So objections overruled.
So to answer your question, no, I don't think. this
It's
is-
either yes or no. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be rude.
No,
No, so you don't think this is a political opinion?
That's
No.
the answer.
Okay, I'm just making sure. I'm gonna move on. Thank you very much.
yeah, you're welcome.
Exhibit 25, may I have a copy of that, please?
No,
No? We're doing so. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Your Honor, if I may approach.
You may.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I'm giving you People's Exhibit 25. Do you recall seeing this a few days ago?
Yes, sir.
Can you please, without, having to read anything, but can you just summarize what is the document contained within Exhibit 25?
So there's,
Or documents,
I
I
was
should
gonna
say.
say, there's 3 documents here labeled A, B, and C contained within Exhibit 25. There's an email exchange here between Mr. Chesbro and Mrs. Sheridan, and then there's attachments with that as well.
The email communications with Mr. Chesbro, do you see anywhere within that particular communication any explicit reference to Mr. Clifford Frost, my client?
Yes.
There is?
Yes,
Okay, can you tell me where?
it's, well, his name's on here on the 4th, 5th page. His name's right there.
Oh, and can you please identify what that is?
It's, his name is listed with the line above it. And it says in witness whereof, we the undersigned. It's part of the documents.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's the signature, proposed signature page, correct?
yes, sir.
But within the actual email communications, not necessarily attachments or
Oh,
whatnot, okay?
Okay,
Fair enough. Do you see any explicit mention of Mr. Clifford Frost? No. And these email communications, was he a sender or a recipient?
no, sir.
Okay. What electors were senders or recipients within that particular set of email communications? I believe Kathy Burden was one.
In this group, I think it was just Marion Sheridan. As the senders and recipients. Let me just-
Is Matic in there too?
No, hang on one second. So one of the emails is addressed to Mrs. Burden. Her email address.
And please don't state that out loud or anyone's.
No,
email
I
address,
wasn't
okay?
going to, but it seems to be that part looks like it's missing, but and then Mrs. Sharon. You asked me about Mrs. Maddox too?
Yeah, was she in there?
I believe so.
I may be thinking about some other discovery, but
Yeah,
nevertheless,
I don't.
I'm sorry to
I don't
meet
see
you.
it.
But nevertheless, Mr. Frost is not mentioned at all in any of those communications, correct?
No, yes, that's correct, sir.
So prior counsel that was doing a cross-examination was asking you about this concept loosely referred to as unindicted co-conspirators, correct? You recall that testimony or exchange?
Today,
Yes.
yes,
And do you recall testimony or an exchange of words regarding unindicted co-conspirators at the first preliminary examination?
yes.
Okay. And can you please tell me who you believe these unindicted co-conspirators are?
Sean Flynn.
Okay.
Ian Norton. That's all that I have for you right now.
What about anyone affiliated with President Trump or the Trump campaign or any other
I
officials?
think it was kind of Ted Pro, did I say that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
you said that earlier,
Yeah.
so he's another one.
Yeah.
But what about President Donald Trump himself?
Yes, I said that before.
So he's also an unindicted co-conspirator.
Yeah.
So we had Cheesebro, the former president,
Yes,
and we have Sean Flynn and Ian Norton, correct?
yes. There's
Anyone else?
Boris Epstein. John Eastman. John Black.
Who was the last name?
John Black. But to clarify, when you say
And I think I
indicted,
know where you're going. I'm gonna sort of do that. Okay, it's the
Okay.
next thing. I think you're
Okay.
reading my mind, which is great.
okay,
So you yourself utilized the terminology at the first preliminary examination, I believe, of unindicted co-conspirator. So
no, that wasn't my turn.
it was not your term?
No.
That was brought up by someone else, other counsel, correct?
Other counsel, yeah.
Okay, so you responded to that question, you gave those same names, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm asking you, what is your understanding of an unindicted co-conspirator? What is that?
Well, somebody who hasn't been charged, but somebody conspired, who conspired in the act.
So these are people that, while not charged, could be charged, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
That, yes,
no, go ahead if you have
No.
anything more.
that's it.
Okay, so then the question I have is regarding the individuals that you listed. Ian Norton, Sean Flynn, President Trump, and then you had Boris Johnson and a few other people, or Boris something.
Epstein,
Sorry, yeah, not Boris Johnson. But anyway, so all of these individuals, and I would like you to go through them one by one. And let's start with President Trump, or former President Trump, I should say. Why did you not recommend charges against the former president?
I don't have, I presented all the information that I have. So, you know, I don't have, when you have enough to charge somebody, then or when I've gathered enough facts that I believe is sufficient to charge somebody with, then the prosecutors make that decision. I don't make that decision. So I present the facts of the case. And so can I say that, you know, throughout my investigation, all these people, through the people that I've talked to and the totality of my investigation were involved in some degree of this case? Yes, but I don't, if you're asking me why aren't indicted, I don't do the indicting or charging.
And I understand you don't make the charging decision, but you make recommendations about who would be worthy of getting criminal charges, correct?
Yes.
And that's my question. So when it comes to former President Donald Trump, and given what your testimony earlier of what an unindicted co-conspirator is, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to paraphrase, not charged, but could be. My question is, why was, and I'm not talking about anyone else right now, we're going to go through them one by one. Why was Mr. Trump not charged?
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna object to relevance.
It's irrelevant.
Well, the relevance is we're taking a look at this conspiracy where he actually talks about unindicted co-conspirators. And I want to figure out why these individuals are not charged, more so not charged, but why he didn't put forward a recommendation if there's sufficient evidence. I want to see the disparate treatment perhaps that may exist between all these other people and then the remaining criminal defendants here that were charged. I'm just trying to figure that out.
The decision to charge or not charge has no relevance. We're talking about whether there's probable cause that the charged defendants committed a crime, or that a crime was committed and that the charged defendants committed a crime. That is a decision that is handled outside the scope of what we're here for today.
I would agree.
In my opinion, I'm sorry, well, it's my opinion and my argument, I would say, but the judges.
Yeah, I
opinion is
don't
the
see
last
how,
one.
I
What?
don't see how that has any bearing on these defendants before the court now.
So,
I understand your concern, but I don't think it's relevant to what we're here for.
and if I may, Your Honor, when it comes to the objection that was brought up, it's absolutely relevant because we need to see why certain people were charged and others were not. And I'm not even really caring, as I believe how I worded the question. It wasn't the decision to charge, but the decision as an investigator to recommend charges. He doesn't authorize them,
Right.
but he recommends them. So I'm asking him regarding the conclusion of his expansive thousands of pages investigation that he did, why he did not feel that, you know, certain people were not worthy of charges. That's all I'm doing. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole.
Counsel.
I think it's relevant to the extent that these are alleged co-conspirators. The witnesses said these are even co-conspirators. We already have one co-conspirator that was charged, but his case was dismissed. If we know who these other co-conspirators are, I want to know if they have been recommended for charges. If not, specifically, why is there evidence out there that exculpates those individuals that doesn't apply to ours, or is there evidence that does exculpate those co-conspirators and could exculpate ours? So it's absolutely relevant.
And if I may add one more thing, Your Honor, disparate treatment goes to the possibility of malicious prosecution, and that's an affirmative defense. So I'm entitled, I believe, to ask him these questions about his
You're joining the
recommendation.
defense object, or you're joining in the support of why this question should be relevant, is what you're saying?
No, I'm joining, yeah, why it is relevant.
Okay, it was her objection though.
No,
Your
I'm
objection
saying
is-
arguing why it is
Okay.
relevant.
Objection is,
And I'm gonna support that because that was part of my argument.
okay, sounds good. You want to show me proof that you had your argument written
No,
down?
that's all right.
Okay, so your objection is as to relevance. I think that I tend to agree with Attorney Gilbert's argument as to whether or not there is information as to why they weren't charged that would, because they were somehow exonerated or found to be not culpable versus these individuals, since they're considered co-conspirators that are not indicted.
May I respond?
Yes.
This witness has previously testified that this is an ongoing investigation. That being said, witnesses that, well, not witnesses, persons that have been identified as unindicted co-conspirators. This process, what we are here for is to determine if a crime was committed and if these defendants committed it. It is not a discovery process for what is left out there as far as the pending investigation. That is not what we are here for.
I agree.
And it's taken us down a rabbit hole that is not relevant.
But he
for
gave a
these
legitimate
specific-
reason as to why this question is not for that purpose.
Well, the purpose he said is for exoneration, which identifying them as an unindicted co-conspirator does not exonerate them. They wouldn't be named as unindicted co-conspirators if
That's
they were.
not necessarily what he
exonerated.
said.
Okay.
You can repeat what you were gonna say.
No, but to further for her argument, she's just admitted that this is an ongoing investigation. I don't want to move to dismiss because their investigation is incomplete, but quite frankly, with that admission, their charges are premature because she has admitted it's an ongoing investigation because there are co-conspirators.
She said that there was previous testimony that this was an ongoing investigation, which there was, I think, in the first iteration of exams that was stated on the record.
Wasn't involved with that.
Agreed, but
It was on this record. as well.
okay, but that this was an ongoing investigation, that doesn't mean, that statement in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean that the investigation as to your client or your co-counsel's clients or have not been completed. It could, we don't know, mean that the investigation as to these non-indicted people are still pending. I don't know because none of you have asked, but,
I'm sorry.
oh, that's you chiming in.
That's
I'm
me.
like,
I'm
who's in my waiting
sorry.
room?
You're like, who's popping in?
No, the mere fact that they're co-conspirators in this scheme indicates that if they have not been indicted because it's an ongoing investigation, does conclusively mean that because they think they've got enough to charge person A, but not enough to charge person B yet, they're continuing the investigation, even though the conspiracy still involves person A. They may uncover something that's exculpatory after we're passed through this. So this has now become absolutely premature.
No, we're allowed to charge who we believe we have probable cause to charge and then charge people later. There's nothing that says that they all have to be charged or no one gets charged.
There's also nothing that says that they have to stop an investigation after they charged people. They commonly continue investigations after charges have been issued.
But respectfully, Your Honor, I actually don't disagree with those two first assertions, but I also say that it is mandatory that if there is exculpatory evidence that could perhaps benefit my defendant or any of the other defendants, that I'm allowed to explore that here.
I agree.
That was not the question that was
Well,
asked.
it was.
The question
said-
that was asked was why were the unindicted co-conspirators not, why he didn't submit.
Specifically,
charges.
Donald Trump was the question. Why wasn't Donald Trump charged?
Right.
And I'm exploring perhaps any type of exculpatory evidence that could perhaps emerge where this disparate treatment. So that's what I'm really trying to get after.
Okay. To the extent that you're trying to discover exculpatory evidence, I'm going to allow your question. So the objections are ruled.
Thank you very much. Sir, can you please go ahead and answer the question?
Yes, sir. So since the case was charged in July of 2023, everything has become public information. As part of an ongoing investigation, it makes it extremely difficult that every part of my investigation, every new lead is now shared with the media, is shared with people. It actually counteracts what I'm trying to do and further my investigation. So it makes it difficult when you're looking at bits and pieces of information. For example, the Kenneth Cheswell files, and you're looking at these individuals and everything is shared for the last year as I'm trying to follow up on leads and things like that. It's very difficult to do. A search warrant that's, where a guy had an envelope 3 years ago and, trying to get a search warrant for a guy that had an envelope 3 years ago, it's not reasonable. I don't have enough probable cause to do that. And I can keep going on, but I think you get the point.
I understand, the difficulties of an investigation, not that I've ever been an investigator, but, attorneys, we kind of do investigations here and there, not to the same level, perhaps professionalism or the tools that professional law enforcement has. But my question is, when it comes to, again, Donald Trump, why was he not charged?
Just explain that I'm trying to obtain evidence, but that evidence is constantly being
Sure. So you're attempting, and I don't mean to cut you off, even though I am, but
Go ahead.
unless you want to
No,
complete your thought.
Counselor, go ahead.
I understand that you're attempting to conduct your ongoing investigation. But isn't it true that, again, not just right now, but previously, you have identified Donald Trump as an unindicted co-conspirator, and your understanding what you just articulated is that an unindicted co-conspirator is an individual that very well could be charged, but is not. So that's what I'm kind of curious about. What?
I'm not saying that,
I'm sorry, did you break another chair?
No, ma'am.
Your Honor, I gave him my chair, so now I think I need a new chair.
I nearly reached over to pick up a napkin off the floor and now I'm seating back. There is no intentional conduct to destroy.
I didn't ask, was it intentionally broken? I just want to know if it's broken. It sounds broken.
It isn't. I mean, it's locked.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
Give me a heart attack. I'm only 42. All right. So again, when it comes to the president, he's an unindicted co-conspirator, as you said, I believe, right?
oh, yes, co-conspirator, unindicted, he just hasn't been charged yet. Is that,
Right.
yes.
But he could be charged, right?
Well, that would be based on sufficient evidence, and
Right.
I don't make the charging decision.
Okay, so my point being, if I'm understanding your testimony correctly, and it might change things a bit, and that's fine. You believe you don't have enough evidence to charge Donald Trump. Am I hearing you correctly at this point in time?
Yes,
Okay. Therefore, he wouldn't really be an unindicted co-conspirator.
well, he's not indicted, but yet
But he's under investigation, but you don't have
he's under
sufficient evidence.
investigation, right?
Right.
So I don't know if we're playing with words here or.
Not trying.
And I'm not
to.
accusing you
Yeah.
of doing that, but he's part of the investigation, but he hasn't been charged with the crime yet. No, to answer your question, no.
Okay, so just to put a fine point on it, and I hope I don't get it asked and answered, all right, but you don't have enough to charge him with today, right?
Yeah.
Or recommend charges, I should
Correct.
say. Okay, good. Now let's take a look at the others. Sean Flynn. Do you have enough evidence at present to recommend charges for Mr. Flynn?
No,
And can you refresh my recollection how Mr. Flynn is important or germane to this alleged conspiracy for the certificate of vote? How is he relevant? How is he a player?
he was there at the GOP headquarters, from what I've learned, and circumstantial evidence shows that he likely mailed off the document.
So, Mr. Flynn, you have circumstantial evidence that he mailed the document, but do you have any other evidence to show that any of the electors charged mailed the document, or is it just Mr. Flynn?
It's just Mr. Flynn.
Okay. So I would think, not the investigator here, just a lawyer, but I'm like, uttering and publishing. It sounds like Mr. Flynn perhaps very well could have been charged with that. And if you don't, and if you know that the others, the other electors, I mean, did not send the envelope, I'm just looking for an explanation why you think Mr. Flynn should not have charges being recommended to be issued against him if he's the one that you believe put the envelope in the mail.
Because there's additional information to gather.
But
I have other leads to follow up on.
sure, then why is it appropriate to charge 16, now 15 electors with uttering and publishing if they were the individuals that did not put the envelope in the US postal system?
They still tried to, well, they signed the document. They still professed that they were the Republican.
Go ahead and finish, I'm sorry, but I'm just
Go
trying to be,
ahead.
I'm trying to be expedient here.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
Operative phrase.
So again,
trying to be-
I don't do the charging.
No,
So
I
I gather
know,
the facts. So I can't explain, why. Anyway.
Okay, so I don't remember the exact count numbers, not necessarily perhaps germane or relevant right now, but there was forgery, there was uttering and publishing, and then there were various conspiracy charges, right?
Yes,
It sounds like you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you believe that there's evidence to charge everyone with conspiracy to utter and publish, right?
yes,
But it also sounds like at the same time, there isn't evidence for the electors to appropriately have charges recommended against them for uttering and publishing, since they, as using your words, didn't put the envelope in the mail.
they signed the document and they tried to serve the document.
It's one thing if someone says something on a document, even assuming arguendo it's forgery. Do you agree that that's different than putting the document or transmitting it or basically publishing it or trying to transmit it? Do you believe there's a distinction
Yeah.
between the two?
Yes.
Okay.
There's,
And Your Honor, if I may inquire, is there a possibility, because I want to be friendly, but I also want to be thorough, if we could break here with Detective Shock and then bring in Captain Green? And we can resume Mr. Shock on Monday. I don't mind continuing, but then again, I don't want to be the most hated person.
We have an hour. I don't think we're getting through Detective Green today. It's 4 o'clock.
So
So I think even if we start him, he's gonna have to come back. Because we probably take her 30 minutes minimum to get through her questions. You make that face, you don't know what objections could come.
I defer to Sister Counsel. How long do you think perhaps your
My direct would not be that long.
Okay, well, then he's still gotta be crossed.
Is
Yeah,
the
he
court
still
really
does have to
thinking
be
about
there.
keeping us till 7:30 today? Okay.
thank you.
They taped off my chair, so we don't know.
Well, I don't know, if another chair breaks, we don't,
Yeah, that's
who
right.
knows? You're thinking it's gonna take you how long? With Detective Green,
Probably do it in 15 minutes.
and then we have Cross.
Depending on brethren's questions, mine, I've got maybe 5 questions. I'm not gonna say quick because the minute I do that, it'll be 2 hours.
Looks like we could be done by 5:30 then.
yes, we could be with Captain Green, I believe.
Okay, well, we'll take a break and we will let you pick up with Agent Shock on Monday.
I appreciate that very much. I'm not the most hated person.
They keep letting me through with that wrench, I tell you, I'm gonna get them all.
I'm in court. I'm in court.
Just no foundation questions.
Skip all of that. There's not gonna be any objections.
We're just diving into the deep end.
We're in the express route.
What are you working on this day?
Yeah, no scenic route.
No scenic route.
Exactly. HOV lane.
We all know that that's where we are.
You gotta be in the HOV lane though.
Bye.
Everybody gotta be in the car together.
Making a toll road.
If not, my evening's locked down, I can stay.
I'm here tonight anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have everybody? Okay, I think so. Okay, back on the record and the people calling you witness for the record.
Yes, we are calling Captain Darren Green, please.
Captain Green. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give us the truth and the whole truth under penalty of perjury.
I do.
Think you can have a seat.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Where do you work, sir?
The Michigan State Police.
And on December 14th, 2020, what was your assignment?
I was the first lieutenant in charge of the state security operations section, which oversees physical security of the Michigan Capitol building.
And were you actually at the Capitol building on December 14th, 2020?
I was.
And were you working with any directives on December 14th, 2020?
Yes, we were working on directives that the Capitol was closed to the general public and only certain people would be allowed inside the Capitol.
And do you recall who the certain people were that would be allowed inside of the Capitol?
People that were either participating in the Electoral College vote or people that had an office inside the Capitol and they were working in their official capacity.
And on December 14th, 2020, were you alerted to a group of people trying to enter by way of the Capitol Annex?
Yes.
Do you recall a time that you received that notification?
It's been 3.5 years. I don't. That is one of my officers that was stationed at the North Annex called me on the radio and said that there was a couple representatives and some guys that tried to get into the North Annex. And I was on the first floor and I went down the ground floor out to the annex. And
okay, and did you encounter the group that was at the North Annex door?
I did.
Okay, are you able to tell us about how many people were contained within that group?
I'd say around 20,
Did you
25.
Did you recognize anybody in that group?
Women.
Was there a conversation between you and anyone in the group?
Yes.
Okay, what did you initiate the conversation?
God, I don't recall. I just remember I was having the conversation with one person. I was just inside the threshold of the door, having a conversation with an older female that was just outside the threshold of the door. And it was about the Capitol being closed for business or the electoral vote that day.
Permission to approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm just going to show you the first page of what has been admitted as People's Exhibit 13. Do you recognize that photo?
I do.
And who do you recognize within that photo?
Myself, Officer Nicoletta Mihai is over my right shoulder. Officer Nicholas Pendle is over my left shoulder, and then behind both of them is Detective Sergeant Bill Luke.
Okay.
And that's all I recognize. Or that's all I know.
Okay, now there's a woman in the photo. Are you able to tell us whether or not that was the woman that you were having the conversation with on December 14, 2020?
Yes, it was.
Now, ultimately, did you allow the group into the Capitol building?
No.
And why not?
We had a list of the people that were gonna be permitted in to actually cast the electoral votes for the Electoral College in Michigan. And those people had already been checked in, and then therefore, they were not allowed in because they did not have business. in the Capitol.
Okay, and after you advised the group that they would not be allowed into the Capitol building, did any additional conversation or anything else happen between you and the group?
Yes, there was a gentleman, older gentleman, gray hair, like a camel colored, winter coat on that kind of came from the back of the group up to the front, and then he and I had an interaction about why they weren't going to be permitted in. And then also, I think if I remember right, he had asked me if I could deliver some correspondence to somebody in government or inside the Capitol building. I advised him that I could not.
I'm gonna show you the same exhibit 13, but the fourth page. And do you recognize the male that's prominently depicted in that photo?
Yes, he's the male that came from the back of the group up to the front, and I had a subsequent conversation with him.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but did you I guess, preserve the conversation that you had between you and the group?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Pass the witness.
Good afternoon, Captain.
Yes, sir.
You were down Lansing, but now you're up in Marquette.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I appreciate you driving that. I'm trying to make this quick. You've been with Michigan State Police for over 22 years.
Yes.
All right. And on December 14th, 2020, you were in charge of security at the Capitol building.
Yes.
And talk about the people that you saw came in that were near where the gentleman was trying to serve you with that envelope. I'm going to direct your attention to young lady, front row, the glasses. Do you see her straight ahead?
I do.
And for the record, I'm identifying that was Rosa. She wasn't in that video. You see, so she.
I don't know. I'd have to watch the video and then.
Are we going to see the video?
And then look at her and be able to say yes or no.
It was like 6 minutes, I think.
Maybe we'll skip it, but you don't recall her seeing it, do you?
I don't.
Okay. And you don't recall, in the times you watched the video, you don't recall her being in the video? You recall? I know you'd like to see it again, but.
I don't recall.
Okay. You don't recall seeing her?
Yes.
All right. Then, at the time that you refused to accept the document, or sorry, you don't know what was in the envelope, correct?
I don't know what the.
And so I'll just say the time that you refused service or the acceptance of this envelope, you knew that the Democratic electors were inside the Capitol.
That's correct.
You also knew from media reports, at least, that the state had been certified to have been won the popular vote by Joe Biden, correct?
Yes.
So you thought that was appropriate or in doing the electoral college thing?
Yes.
Okay, and so were you told specifically, don't let the Republican electors in? Like, did you know they were coming?
I had no idea they were coming.
Okay, but you did have a list of, hey, these are the electors, the Democratic electors that are going to be allowed today. So if they come, you have to.
Yes.
Are they supposed to come to that annex?
I believe that they were.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you know if they received? If you know, do you know if they were sent any kind of invitations?
I don't know.
I would just ask as a point of clarification to explain who they
They-
is.
Sorry, any of the Democratic electors.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to this.
Okay, thank you. I didn't expect it. Did you know that this group was not the Democratic electors? You knew that this group was some other group, correct?
Yes, when I went down, I talked to my officers. They had the list down there, and they had advised me that all 16 of the Democratic electors had been checked in and were inside.
Oh, okay, understood. Thank you. And did you think a crime happened at the time that the gentleman tried to hand you an envelope?
You're a crime that happened, no.
And if a crime did, it probably sounds like a dumb question, but if a crime happened in your presence, you would do some kind of report?
Absolutely.
You didn't do any reports in this case?
No.
And obviously you didn't arrest anybody,
No, sir.
and you don't know what, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm going to ask you to quickly scan around the room, including the attorneys and everybody. Do you recognize any of the people having been there that day?
I don't.
All right. And you said there was only one person that attempted to deliver an envelope to you,
Yes.
and only one?
From my recollection, 3.5 years ago, yes.
Okay, and you vaguely described them, you weren't able to identify them. You recall if they identified themselves as, hey, I'm a lawyer, you gotta take this?
I don't remember them identifying themselves as a lawyer. I believe that gentleman had identified himself by name, but not by any
Okay.
type of title or profession.
And then when he may I approach the witness, Your Honor,
Okay.
assuming this is the envelope. How close was he to you when he did it?
Probably a foot or two.
About this distance, maybe a little closer?
Sure.
Did he reach out and say, I have this envelope, I want you to take it, or did he stand there and hold it close to his chest? Demonstrate to me if you would, if you can recall.
I don't remember what he
Okay.
did. I just remember that I kind of put my hands up and said, I'm not gonna take receipt of it.
All right, and that was my last question. So even if he came up to you, and I apologize for touching you, don't put me down. Did he come up here and try and force that envelope on you at
Please
all?
put him down.
Well, I've already, never mind.
To his face. No, that I would have remembered and that did not happen.
All right, but you never actually physically took the envelope.
No, sir.
I think this has been asked, nobody else tried to give you an envelope.
No, sir.
And did anybody represent to you that they were one of the true Democratic electors? In other words, you had been told all the other people that were in the building had been checked off. Did anybody come up to you and say, wait a minute, somebody else impersonated me, and I'm really the guy that should be in it, guy or girl, that should be in there?
No, nobody ever said it.
All right, you said, also, I'm talking fast for a reason. You also said that you had a list of the people who were permitted in, correct?
Yes,
And that was handwritten type what?
I believe it's tight.
And was it endorsed by anybody? In other words, these are the order of Joe Montana, and you can't let these people in, or these are the only ones you should let in, my authority, blah, blah, blah.
I don't think there was detail. I think it was just the names of the people that we checked them off, or my officers checked them off as they were interviewed.
Do you know who developed that list?
I don't recall.
Do you remember who delivered the list to you or your office or your staff?
I don't recall.
You don't know. All right. And when did you first find out that you were directed to limit access to the building?
I believe it was around like 11:30 in the morning. I'm sorry, yeah, I think it was about 11:30 in the morning.
All right. And this incident happened approximately when? Approximately. In the afternoon, around 2 o'clock, 1400.
That sounds right.
Have you ever seen this guy before?
I haven't.
All right.
Your Honor, for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. This would be Lieutenant Thompson's, so I just pointed to. Do you have people gather on the lawn of the annex or near the annex often?
Not the annex, no.
All right. Would it be illegal for anybody to just congregate there?
No.
All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Just a couple. Trooper Green, good afternoon again.
Good afternoon, sir.
You testified that you didn't know what time you had this interaction with what you done. Group of people, correct?
I don't, yes, that is correct.
And you weren't the first officer that had some kind of interaction with these individuals. Some other officers who were present,
Oh,
correct?
yeah, Officer Mihai, I believe, might have been the first one. She's the one that called me on the radio saying that there was people at the North Annex trying to get into the Capitol.
Okay, so this wasn't like any emergency, you run up the stairs or anything.
It would have been down the stairs and I did not run down the stairs.
Okay, so once you approached what you call the group of people, was there any attempt for them to forcibly enter into the building?
No,
And when you say group, did they announce themselves as being in the same group or all together?
I don't believe that they did, no.
So that's an assumption that you made, that they were in a so-called group.
Well, I just meant group of people, not a specific group affiliation with a.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sort of like today is a group of people out on the lawn in the state capitol, correct?
Yeah, I would consider the people in this courtroom today a group of people.
Right. People out there doing yoga, others protesting. So you didn't know what each individual person was doing in that particular vicinity, right?
That's correct.
And was there any other attempt to go in any other doors in the Capitol during this period?
No.
And once again, you said you didn't know what time, right?
I don't remember what time the interaction with the people at the North Annex was.
Okay, so you don't know if it was before 2, after 2 p.m.?
I don't recall. It's been so long.
Now, this so-called envelope, you said the only person you ever saw possess that was the man in the camel coat.
Yes.
Camel colored coat, right? You didn't see any female have this so-called envelope?
I don't recall. I don't believe so.
And this person who came up to you, the words tried to serve you. Do they have
No,
slurs?
to clarify, he asked me if I could deliver that to, I can't remember the name of the person at the Capitol. It might have been the Senate Majority Leader at the time, Mike Shirkey. I don't recall exactly, but he'd asked me to deliver it to, on his behalf, to somebody.
Okay, on his behalf.
Yeah.
So-
From my recollection, yes.
And when you said no, that was the end of it. They just, or he just left and seated on about his business.
After the interaction that I had with him and the other people that were out at the North Annex, I believe I went inside and the door was shut behind me, and then I had interaction with my officers, but no further interaction with people outside.
Right, so you said, I can't accept your envelope, sir, and then that's when they dispersed, that's what you're saying?
I don't know if they dispersed. Like I said, my interaction with them was over. I went inside the Capitol, the door was closed, and I don't know what they did outside. I probably wasn't paying attention to them anymore at that point.
Now, the man in the camel colored coat, did he ever pull out anything from the envelope?
I don't believe so.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hi, Captain. My name is Dave Coleman. I'm an attorney representing Hank Choate in this matter. The answer from Gladstone, so I'm envious that you're up in the chat. So love it up there. Thank you for being here today. I just have a couple of questions. You said that the person in this camel coat that had the envelope wanted you to deliver correspondence. That was the word you used, right? Is that what you took? It was some kind of letter or correspondence?
Yes.
Okay. Did he tell you what was inside it?
I don't recall if he did or not.
Okay. So you didn't know that it was any kind, or if it was some kind of official document, you were never told that, right?
I had no idea what it was.
Okay. So you thought it was just like a letter or a correspondence?
Could have been anything.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And do you know who Hank Choate is? Ever met him to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And I represent Mr. Choate. He's sitting right here. Do you recognize him?
I do not.
Okay, so you don't know if he was there that day or not?
I don't.
Do you recall Hank Choate walking up to you or trying to give you an envelope or do anything that day?
I do not.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything else.
Captain, my name is Kevin Kiefsky. I represent Mr. Frost, who's immediately behind me, and he is wearing a pink shirt along with a gray tie. Do you recognize him?
I do not.
Okay. And when it came to that group that came to the Capitol, we had the individual in the tan or camel colored coat you testified to. Was there another individual that you spoke with that identified herself as a state representative?
Without watching the video again, I don't recall. It's been so
Okay.
long.
When we take a look at the decision not to allow this group into the Capitol building via the annex, was this a decision that you had any part of?
No.
No. You had, again, a list of authorized individuals that could come in, and that was it.
Yes.
And
Well, and let me clarify,
Please.
the list of individuals or people that had an office inside the Capitol and they were there that day to conduct official business in their office
okay.
is the directions that we were given.
And how long were you working at the Capitol doing the security detail there?
At that time, on December 14th,
Yes.
like 18 months.
And when it comes to that 18-month period, have you ever received such a list before where you would only have authorized people permitted into the Capitol?
No.
No. And was that the only time you ever received such a list during your 18-month tenure that allowed only particular people into the Capitol? To the best of your recollection.
There might have been for like inaugurations and like parties and stuff at the Capitol. We might have had a guest list given to us by like representatives or senators to allow their guests in, but maybe minus that would have been the only time.
The list that you were provided, how did you get that list? Was it sent to you by email, or did someone hand it to you, or how did you get that list?
I don't recall the 3.5 years ago. I just know that we had the list. It was down at the North Annex for my officers, and that's who was going to be permitted.
Is it possible that your supervisor gave it to you? Who was, I guess, your supervisor? You can name that individual.
Oh, yeah, at that time, it would have been Captain David Simmons.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if he gave me the list or not.
Do you recall having conversations with your supervisor, the captain at the time, about this security protocol only allowing certain people in on December 14th?
I did, but it was after I had received an email, or I'm sorry, a text from, I believe it was Mark Totten, and on the text thread was me, Mark Totten, and Joe, and our colonel at the time, Joe Gasper, and it was the directions were coming from that level about what the security protocol was going to be at the Capitol that day.
And Mr. Totten, who is he?
I believe at the time he was the chief legal counsel for the executive office of the government.
So, to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, Mr. Totten works for the governor.
Yes.
Okay. And do you believe that that particular list possibly came from him?
I have no idea if it did or not.
The text message that you received, and again, I'm sure that 3.5 years ago, you don't have all of those unless you have Apple iMessage, which will keep everything forever. But do you recall really the contents of that text message, what it was conveying?
Yeah, it was about the card readers were going to be turned off on the exterior of the Capitol, and only people that were participating in the Electoral College or the electors on the Democratic side themselves, or people that had an office physically in the Capitol that were there to conduct business, were the only ones that were going to be allowed into the Capitol that day.
Thank you. That text message, to the best of your recollection, again, I know it's a while ago, did you receive that before or after receiving the list? Or was it contemporaneous?
I don't recall if it was before or after.
Okay. When we take a look at that day in question, to the best of your recollection, was there any talk about a bomb threat or a bomb scare?
I don't recall, but I don't believe that there was that day.
Okay. Have you had bomb scares or threats at the Capitol?
Yes.
And generally, what happens during a bomb threat or scare at the Capitol?
We obviously evacuate the building, surrounding areas for any collateral damage if there was a device. We'll notify our law enforcement partners, and then for the state police, we bring in resources such as our bomb squad, bomb sniffing dogs, things like that, and actually physically clear the Capitol.
And none of those particular personnel or materials or equipment, including bomb sniffing dogs, were there at the Capitol that day, to the best of your knowledge?
That's correct.
Okay. And then when we take a look at that envelope, again, do you recall essentially what that envelope kind of looked like, or?
I think it was like a, not manila, but like just a yellow standard envelope, like a big one that would be able to hold like a 8.5 by 11.5 sheet of paper, like a standard sheet of paper, like that size of a yellow envelope that you see like in a business or office setting.
Do you recall whether or not that envelope had a label or anything written on it?
I do not recall.
Okay. The special agent in charge, that is the really officer in charge, I guess you can say, for the Attorney General's investigation, Detective Howard or Agent Howard Schock. Do you know him?
I do.
And have you spoken to him about this investigation?
Not about this investigation, just he's the one that sent me the subpoenas for the case to be here for like in December and then this week.
Sure. So prior to receiving any of these subpoenas come in your presence to come here today, you haven't had conversations with Detective Schock previously, to the best of your knowledge?
I can't remember having any interactions with him, no.
And I believe that Detective Schock was not the first person on this investigation. I used as a preparatory remark. Did you ever talk to anyone else from the Attorney General's office, to the best of your knowledge, about the events of December 14th? If not Detective or Agent Schock, anyone else? I know it's a while back.
It's been so long. I do remember being interviewed, I believe, by somebody from the AG's office, but I don't know if it was Mr. Schock or not.
That's fine.
So
do you happen to know when?
I have no idea.
Would you say perhaps we're taking a look at maybe a few weeks or a few months after the event?
Oh, gosh, it's been so long.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
have no idea.
That's okay.
And honestly, between the people that I've talked to for this case, between the FBI and the National Archives, things like that, to be perfectly honest, it kind of just all runs together.
That's okay. I only want you to tell me exactly what you know, testify from personal knowledge. I have one or two more, and I'm going to pass it to attorney. So you testified that you refused a service or acceptance of this envelope, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have a directive or command either in the text message or within the document that listed the appropriate people that come into the Capitol on any one of those communique where it said you cannot or no one cannot accept any type of documents or anything like that?
No, not in the text message or anything like that, but just working at the Capitol was always standard practice that we never took receipt or possession of anything that was trying to be delivered to anybody at the Capitol or anybody that worked there. That was our kind of our unwritten rule, that we just never were that go-between or the medium between that person and the person they were trying to deliver.
So in other words, just from my understanding, it was standard operating procedure, SOP, right?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you, Captain.
Yes, please.
Captain, good afternoon. My name is John Freeman and I represent Marion Sheridan. You first learned that the events on this particular day that we're talking about were going to become the focal point of a pretty major investigation.
I think it was within a matter of a couple of days when it kind of blew up nationally about these electors that were trying to cast their votes and things like that.
How did you first learn?
Probably through the news, just like anybody, private citizen would.
Sure. When was the first time that you recall learning through sort of official channels that, oh my goodness, I was there, I'm on camera, and now I got to start talking to a bunch of people?
I don't, it's probably within a week or two, I would imagine. I can't say a certain date, but it had to be not too far after the events of December 14th. that I made.
Was that initial inquiry in-house, meaning within MSP, or was it an outside agency?
I I'm sure we started talking about it internally first, just amongst even me and my section at the Capitol. Kind of the gravity, because when we went down that day and had that interaction with people in the North Annex, we had no idea it was gonna be a big deal.
I mean, and at first, as this was all going on, this is sort of like a run of the mill, no big deal kind of thing, right?
It was absolutely, it was no big deal.
And now all of a sudden you realize you got the national spotlight on, right?
Yes.
Not exactly where you want to be.
No, not really.
So initially it starts to become apparent that this is going to be something official, and that sort of official start of the conversation comes within MSP, the folks that you work with on a daily immediate basis, fair to say?
Yeah, that's it.
So when do the other birds start coming in and chirping around? And when I say other birds, I mean other law enforcement agencies.
It was, I mean, I don't recall exactly, but it had to be within a matter of a month or so, I'm sure.
Okay, so fair to say, you know, if this happened December 14th, are we talking maybe January of 2021?
That's a definite possibility.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, do you remember what the first outside agency was? And when I say outside agency, I mean non-MSP.
I can't recall that. I don't recall.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't feel comfortable. I don't even want to guess, obviously.
I don't want you to guess either. Okay,
So-
we both know the rules of testimony. There's no guessing allowed. Right?
Yeah, so I
Okay.
can't recall.
Okay, fair enough. How many different agencies do you think you had communications with between the first time there was a communication and, let's say, if you can pinpoint it, let's say within the first year?
Gosh. Probably at least 3 or 4.
So what were some of those agencies within that first year that you had conversations with about the event?
I'm sure it was the Attorney General's office in Michigan, FBI. I've spoken to an investigator from the National Archives out of Washington, DC. Those are the 3 that are popping into my head right out of the gate.
Kind of an unusual experience for you to have to sit down with, say, the Federal Bureau of Investigation to talk about something that you thought was a routine matter, fair to say?
Very fair.
That'll get your attention real fast.
Yes,
won't it?
sir.
Where did that interview take place?
The most recent one happened yesterday at the Michigan State Police First District Headquarters.
Really? And who was in that? Who was at that interview?
Special Agent Chris Meyer from the Washington field office. And then
Okay.
there was 2 U.S. attorneys that were with him.
Oh,
And I don't recall their names. They were both female. I think Kristen Borman. I don't remember their names, but I know Chris, because he's who I corresponded with making arrangements for him to fly in with the U.S. attorneys and interview myself, Officer Mihai, and Officer Pendo. So we kind of set it up yesterday, and that's when it happened. It was yesterday.
and what was your understanding on what U.S. Attorney's Office they were?
Chris just told me that he was flying in with 2 attorneys from DC, and they wanted to talk to me, Officer Mihai and Officer Pendo.
And when you say 2 attorneys, you mean 2 government prosecutors, fair to
Yes.
say?
Yes.
Okay. So the last time you had some interaction with the FBI was as recent as yesterday.
Yes.
Let's try to back up now and, you know, let's just talk about the FBI specifically.
I can't remember how many interactions I had with them or interviews with them.
More than just the one yesterday?
And I apologize, you're right there. It's in my head, everything's running together because obviously it's a completely different subject, but I had a lot of interaction with the FBI with the plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer.
Okay.
So those might be kind of getting, mixed up in my head as far as when I talked to the FBI and what topic it was about, whether it was the electoral votes or
Okay.
it was the plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer.
In your mind, though, were there separate meetings with the FBI where the only focus was on the electoral vote issue?
Honestly, the only one I can testify to is the one that happened yesterday.
Okay. But going back now to early 2021, okay, when you said that the other agencies started to, come in and start asking questions. Was the FBI one of those agencies way back when? In 2021? Because I think you just said that.
I'm sure they had to have been.
And when you had these meetings with the FBI agents, do you know if they were taking notes?
I don't remember if they were taking notes or not.
Okay. Did you prepare any reports?
I don't believe that I did.
You're not required as a MSP personnel to write a report when you get interviewed by the FBI?
No.
No? Okay. Did you have a counsel with you? An attorney?
No.
No? All right. So you mentioned another agency, another federal agency. What was that? The National?
I've been in screw up the acronym, but it was the National Archives, I believe.
And was that a special agent from the National Archives?
Yes.
A gun carrying, badge wearing law enforcement officer, as far as you understood it?
As far as I understood it, yes.
Okay. And when was that?
I was the post commander at the Lansing post, so I can give you a time frame of May 28th, 2022 to August 19th, 2023.
So sometime in between, in that date range.
Best I can do.
How many times do you remember when you were the post commander? Okay, let's narrow it down to that time period. How many times do you remember talking with federal agents from the National Archives?
Just once.
Okay. Do you remember any FBI contact about the events of December 14th during that time period while you were the post commander?
I don't.
Any other federal agency did you recall?
Not that I recall. No.
And so the focal point of these conversations with the federal agencies had to do with your interactions with the people that came that were on the film that we talked about. Fair to say?
Fair.
Okay. And am I understanding you correctly that you've never sat down and had a conversation with Howard Schock from the AG's office about the same events?
I can't remember if I did or not. I honestly, I can't.
Is there anything that would refresh your memory?
I mean, maybe if like you just said, I didn't do if I met with Howard Schock, I didn't do a report, but if I met with Howard Schock and he did a report, if there's that report exists, then maybe it would refresh my memory.
Okay. Well, we're not going to do that at 4:45 on Friday.
Do you want to take a second?
I hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a no, thank you. Taking it as such.
When were you first interviewed by somebody in the Attorney General's office?
I don't recall when the time would be, or I have no idea when the exact date would have been.
Was it when you were with the Lansing Post commander?
I don't recall.
So you're a career law enforcement officer, correct?
Yes.
How long with MSP?
23 and a half years.
Any prior law enforcement experience before that?
No, sir.
And I understand that how long have you been a captain?
9 months.
And what are your responsibilities just in general? You're up in Marquette, fair to say. I'm going to try and cut to the chase. How many people do you supervise?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Your Honor, I ask for just a little bit of leeway. I want to talk a little bit about investigative techniques. What do you know?
What he knows about investigate.
As a career law enforcement officer, rather than having to recall him in defense case in chief during this exam, I ask for.
Okay, does he had parts of the investigation in this matter? Is that what the angle you're going, or I'm not following?
Depending on where the questions take me, that's where I'm going to go.
I'll give you some leeway, I guess, but
Thank you.
I'll hold your objection for now.
Thank you. So I think my question was, what are your general, how many people do you supervise?
Probably 150.
And in your career, have you ever been a detective, let's say?
Detective trooper and detective sergeant, yes.
Okay. And that essentially means that in many times in the span of your career, you've been assigned to investigate allegations of criminal activity, fair to say?
No. When I was a detective trooper, and I was a detective sergeant, that was about 8 years combined, and I was assigned to a fugitive task force.
Okay.
So my job was to find people that were wanted and were running from uniform law enforcement.
But how about just in general in your career? Have you ever, as part of your responsibilities, I assume, you get a report that there was criminal activity, and your job would be to go out and investigate it and figure out what happened, fair to say?
Yes, absolutely.
And you know this from your training and your experience, when you're confronted or someone makes an allegation that something criminal happened, your job as an investigator is to go out, collect the evidence, and then reach a conclusion as to what happened. Fair to say?
My job is to go out and collect evidence and do interviews and do a thorough investigation, put it in a professional legible report, and then send it to a prosecuting attorney and then draw a conclusion whether a crime was committed or not.
And you don't start with the decision, yes, a crime was committed, and now I'm going to go back and find the evidence to prove that the crime was committed, correct?
That's correct.
Your job is to gather the evidence and then present that impartially to somebody else.
Correct.
Okay. It would be inappropriate to start with the conclusion first that a crime had been committed and then work your way backwards, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Does Michigan State Police investigate voter fraud?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. In all your travels, you've never come across any sort of voter fraud investigation? Even anecdotal?
I think the only thing I can think of is when I was at the Capitol, there might have been some MSP involvement. I mean, I heard rumors from up north of like voter machine fraud.
Was that in Muskegon?
I think it was farther north than that. It was up in like Antrim County.
Antrim
or Benton
County?
Yeah.
Okay. And that was something that MSP was looking at as far as you knew?
I think I had heard names of MSP investigators that I knew that were helping out with that.
People that you knew personally?
I knew their names. I might not know them personally.
Now, you mentioned a task force. You're aware that there's all kinds of joint federal and state task forces, correct?
Yeah.
They involve federal authorities, state authorities, local authorities, and you guys work in conjunction on a specific task. And that's very common in the law enforcement community, correct?
Yes.
And there's often information sharing among all those agencies, correct?
That's correct.
There's sharing of reports among the agencies, correct?
Yes.
You guys talk with each other when you're doing these joint investigations, correct?
Yes.
So it wouldn't be uncommon for you as an MSP personnel to have access to reports from other agencies as part of the task force environment. Fair to say?
I guess you'd have to define access. I mean, in my experience, when I was working on the fugitive task force, if I wanted to report from like the U.S. Marshals or MDOC, who was a part of the task force, I didn't have direct access to their report writing and record system. I would ask a fellow member that was a member of that respective department, can you get me a copy of this report? And they, with their access, would get me the information that I was.
Right. So you say, hey, Deputy Marshal, can I get a copy of reports about such and such? And you get it.
Yes.
Fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you knew that felonies were being committed on December 14th during your interaction with these people at the annex, you'd have had to make an arrest, fair to say.
Yes.
No question about that. That's your job.
Yes.
You were a first lieutenant. Can you help me understand the significance of that particular rank?
A first lieutenant is in charge of a section or a work site. And then like a captain is above that, and a captain's in charge of a division or a district.
So is it uniform across MSP that a first lieutenant would supervise a certain number of people underneath him or her?
Yes,
Is there, can you give us a ballpark number, like just a random first lieutenant? Is that person supervising at least X number up to Y or?
there's not a limit. I know first lieutenants in our department that supervise one person. I know first lieutenants in our department that supervise a post with 70 people. So it varies.
Now, I really would like you to try to think about, you mentioned that there was a list that you were given as to who was allowed in and who was not allowed in, right? Was that a physical list?
I don't know. I know that my officers at the North Annex had a list of the people that were going to be allowed in to participate in the Electoral College.
And as you say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay, you're done?
Yes.
Okay. But as you sit here today, you don't know where that list came from?
I don't remember. I don't remember where the list came from.
Okay. So help me understand, you mentioned a text message that involved, I think you said yourself and a Mr. Cotton, and then there was another name that you gave, and I didn't catch who that was.
Joe Gasper.
And Joe Gasper is who?
He was our colonel at the time, our director of the state police.
And that's the top dog in the state police?
Yes.
Okay. And this Mr. Cotton, who was that?
From my recollection, I believe at that time he was the chief legal counsel in the executive office of the governor.
A lawyer?
Yes.
Okay. And the text message that you had, was that on a department phone?
Yes.
Do you still have that same department number without disclosing the number? Is that still your department number?
Yes.
Do you know where the text message is?
I do.
Where is it?
On my phone and my backpack in the break room.
You still have it?
I do.
It's in a report.
And was that given to Howard Schott?
I don't remember if I gave it to Howard Schock or not.
Okay. How many text messages were there between you, Totten, and the head of MSP?
Maybe 2 or 3. It wasn't many.
And you were basically following the directions of your superior and Mr. Totten, fair to say?
Yeah, obviously when I'm a first lieutenant, I see the director on my phone in a text thread. And he agrees with the text thread because he replied, I'm gonna follow rank and do what he tells me to do.
And Mr. Totten, who's a lawyer, was also a part of that, correct?
If I remember right, I believe that the text message said that the direction was from Mark Cotton. I don't know if he was on it. It just said it was weird. And I say this because I just sent this information to the FBI yesterday, or actually today, that the text message said, gave us the direction of what the security protocol was going to be in a nutshell. And then there was another text message right underneath there that said, this is from Mark Cotton.
And that it was Totten's directions and essentially.
That's how I interpreted it, yeah.
Why was the FBI interested?
It came up,
Objection, speculation.
If it came up.
To the extent he knows, he can answer. You don't.
it came up yesterday in my interview with the FBI, and I mentioned the text, and I asked them if they wanted a screenshot of it, and they said yes.
Yeah, just have a couple of minutes or moments, really. How long did you meet with the FBI yesterday?
Objection, relevance.
What's the relevance?
Your Honor, I'm just asking a few clarifying questions about evidence that's already in the record.
Right, but how's it relevant? You asked him previously about the meeting. He mentioned that, which surprised, I think, most of us, but what is it relevant? And that's going further into that line of question.
To me, it's just a common sense kind of question. How long did you meet with them?
Okay, objection is sustained. Thank you.
you meet with any other agencies yesterday?
No.
Is the FBI asking any questions about the people that are charged in this case?
No, they didn't.
They ask any questions about the guy in the camel colored coat?
No.
They ask any questions about any specific individuals?
Nope.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask for a moment to confer with fellow counsel privately. I'm not sure where the best spot for us to do that might be in the hallway.
Probably in the hallway.
Okay.
Off the record.
Yeah. Your Honor, thank you for the
Oh, back on the record.
accommodating me and brother counsel. At this time, I have no further questions.
Redirect your witness.
Very briefly. No, seriously, it's gonna be. I'm going to show you pages 2, 3, and 4 of what is AG report number 3. And I'm going to ask you, are these the text messages that you received regarding the security protocol for the Capitol on December 14th, 2020?
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
What exhibit was that?
Is that an exhibit?
It's not an exhibit. I just
Oh.
wanted to make sure that we had the text messages that he referred
Okay,
to.
sounds good. May this witness be excused.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Captain Green. That's exactly 5:01, and so we're going to conclude for today. We'll be back 8:30 on Monday, and we're gonna have witnesses called by the name of whom?
I guess we're gonna finish Agent Shot, Jonathan Brader, and Troy Hudson, and Tony Zammit will serve.
Oh, Tony Zinn was served. Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
Hudson, and then Zammit was served for your witness.
Yes, for
Okay.
Monday, I'm coming in to.
Okay, sounds good. Any matters we should address before we conclude today? For the people.
None for Mr. Rucker.
Sorry,
Back at 8:30.
back at 8:30.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, off the record. Same to you.
All right.